The year is 2020. Shimmering portals to another dimension suddenly rip open across the globe. And just like that, our peaceful world was thrown into absolute chaos. Nations scrambled, deploying their best soldiers into these gates. They were sent in to investigate. Not a single one ever came back. Then the real nightmare began. Hordes of grotesque monsters poured out from these hellish gateways, and against their insane power, our modern weapons were utterly useless. These creatures started tearing humanity apart, city by city. A dark age descended upon the earth, but then mysterious patrons began choosing people. Those chosen were gifted with unbelievable powers and abilities. They became known as hunters. With these new hunters leading the charge, humanity finally started to punch back against the ravenous monsters. These patrons could even juice up active hunters with more power, making each one a unique force of nature. But among the endless sea of hunters, one emerged whose strength was simply off the charts. Wielding an army of soldiers and the power to command fire itself, the entire world knew him by one name, the Demon King. The Demon King had a broken skill. He was the only one who could level up just by slaughtering his foes. But his overwhelming power threatened the 12 great heroes, beings who were basically worshipped as gods. So they conspired, and his entire existence was wiped from the history books. These self-proclaimed gods then created a new world order called Eden. Hunters were hailed as the next step in human evolution, and anyone who couldn't become one was reduced to a slave. The hunters seized control of the world. A full 100 years flash by. A young man sprints desperately down a forest trail. He finally collapses, gasping for air, his energy completely spent. A man watching him from a tree branch above clicks his tongue. Already done, he asks. The kid pants that he's hit his absolute limit. He has nothing left in the tank. The man just looks disappointed. You said you wanted to change the world, he scoffs. You really think you can become a hunter? With that kind of mentality, to get a patron's attention, you have to shatter your limits. The kid looks up, asking if Sung Hyun really believes that. When your patron first found you, did you have to break your limits too? Sung Hyun drops down from the tree and coolly replies that his patrons just started backing him. The young man's face falls. That's not fair. Sung Hyun just nods. Life's not fair. The fact that you're a normal person, and I'm a hunter, proves that. If the kid can't run, he needs to try something else. Sung Hyun holds out his hand, and a spear of pure magic materializes right in front of him, landing in the young man's grip. The kid is stunned. He couldn't believe he was holding real hunter gear. Every time he saw this kind of power, it blew his mind. Sung Hyun tells him not to get so worked up. He'll get it when he finally becomes a hunter himself. The kid clutches the spear, saying that after hunters murdered his parents, Sung Hyun gave him a certain book to remember them by. It detailed all the twisted things the hunters had done. That's the reason he wants to fix this broken world. The boy looks down, adding that Sung Hyun kept him alive all this time, but seeing how little he's accomplished, it feels like becoming a hunter is just a pipe dream. In Eden, they preach that becoming a hunter is destiny, a gift from the heavens. Sung Hyun just shakes his head. That's a lie. Don't sweat it, he says. You'll definitely become a hunter. The boy nods, mentioning he never goes anywhere without the book, the last reminder of his parents. It is, after all, the autobiography of a forgotten hero whose legend was erased by 12 corrupt gods. Sung Hyun sighs, saying that if that hero was still around, the world would be a much better place. But as the mentor and his student talk, a figure high in the sky spots them. A woman gazing down from above announces, "Found them." Instantly, a devastating magical blast rains down from the sky. Sung Hyun's instincts scream, and he glances up, yelling that they're under a magic attack. He slams his hand into the kid's chest, launching him backward. The boy goes flying through the air just in time to see a massive beam of energy completely engulf his mentor. A hunter's attack, he thinks in terror. But what would one be doing all the way out here? The woman's voice echoes Neil, and against his will, the boy's knees slam into the dirt. He's completely shocked. His own body had betrayed him, following her command without question. He was totally paralyzed. The woman descends gracefully to the ground as several other figures materialize beside her, all of them radiating immense magical power. They drop to one knee, addressing her as the Queen of Eden. They hail Lady Athena. The kid's mind reels. Athena. As in the Athena. That would make her the supreme ruler of Eden, a hunter of the highest possible rank. But what was one of the 12 divine beings who built Eden even doing in a place like this? Athena speaks, her voice cold. He couldn't have gotten far. Find him and bring him to me, she thinks to herself. The moment they finally pinpointed his location, he vanished. Just who was this man, and why did he show up here? Her gaze falls on the kneeling boy, and she notes that she can't feel a single drop of magic coming from him. The boy's heart pounds in his chest. The book he's holding, the Demon King's autobiography, contains the truth about the 12 heroes' dirty secrets. Secrets they've buried for over a century. He just has to pray that Athena doesn't figure out what he's got, and just walk away. To her, this kid was nothing more than a useless slave. He dared to hope. Did she actually leave? Am I safe? But as his eyes lifted, Athena was looming right over him, and that flicker of hope died instantly. She told him she'd almost overlooked the faint aura of magic clinging to him. It was nearly gone, but Athena's sharp eyes caught the telltale signs, the jackhammer rhythm of his heart, the rapid, shallow breaths. He was a deer in the headlights, and she knew he was hiding something from her. And she was right on the money. Athena's voice was ice as she commanded him, "Show it to me, now, and tell me everything." He had zero control. His own body started to betray him, moving on its own. It felt like the command of a god. He fought it, trying to lock his muscles down. Because if that book ended up in her hands, it was game over. He was dead, but his body just wouldn't obey. And his hand reached into his tunic, pulling out the forbidden book. It was a history of the Demon King, not as a villain, but as the true savior of humanity. A truth that Eden would do anything to keep buried. In that moment, a chilling realization hit him: everyone he loved could be slaughtered if this went south. His entire home district would be wiped from the map, completely erased. That was Eden's way. Annihilate anything and anyone who dared to stand against them. He could not let her have this book. Athena's eyes locked onto the object in his trembling hands. "There it is," she breathed. The autobiography of the Demon King. The title was right there on the cover, unmistakable. How a nobody like him got his hands on it was a mystery. But she didn't care. "That belongs to me now," she declared. But just as she reached for it, a flash of movement, Heimdall exploded onto the scene. He slammed into Athena with raw power, sending her hurtling backward before her fingers could even touch the cover. Heimdall scooped up the book and turned to the kid. "Stop your crying. You're a man, aren't you?" he said. "You held out. You did good, fighting to protect that book until the very last second." With tears blurring his vision, the kid looked up at his bald mentor and asked, Who are you? How could he just throw down with Athena, one of the 12 gods? Heimdall just shook his head. "Sorry, kid, no time for the full story. Didn't think they'd track us down this fast." Heimdall then pushed the book back into the kid's hands. "You've been saying it this whole time, right? You want to change this world." His mentor's eyes were intense. "The hunters, they play God, and they lord over everyone else. People like you with no power. You're just their pets, living and dying at their whim." Heimdall leaned in close. "But what if I gave you the power to change all that, the strength to defy the 12 gods themselves? Would you still fight to make this world better?" Just then, a roar of fury. Athena was back on her feet, her divine power flaring to life as she swung her blade. She charged, screaming his name, Heimdall. He didn't flinch. "She's on us. There's no more time. I can't take her alone. I need your answer. Now." The kid was completely floored, his mind reeling from the impossible choice. But through the shock, he found his voice. "Yes. If I had that kind of power, I would burn this rotten world down and build a new one. For the better. A future where everyone could be free." A flicker of a smile crossed his mentor's face. "That's the answer I was looking for." And then, Heimdall plunged his own sword straight through the young man's chest. The cold steel ripped through flesh and bone. As the kid stared down in disbelief, the bald man whispered, "If you happen to run into me over there, be nice to him. Would you?" And then impossibly his body, with the massive sword still skewering his torso, began to float into the air. He couldn't process any of it. Heimdall's words, the feeling of weightlessness. A voice echoed in his mind. "The contract is complete. As per the pact with the fallen angel, the boy had been granted a patron." His entire body became translucent, phasing out of existence. He was just a spectator in his own body, his mind struggling to grasp the absolute insanity of the moment. A moment later, he solidified, crashing back into reality. He stumbled, his hands flying to his chest, trying to make sense of it all. He was positive he'd been run through with a freaking sword, but there wasn't a single scratch on him, not a drop of blood. But his body, it felt different, stronger. A raw power was thrumming through his veins, and a system-like voice announced, "Patronage has been acquired." He thought, wait, does this mean I'm a hunter now? But where in the world was he? He frantically scanned his surroundings. That thrumming magical energy, it was radiating from him. Could he be inside a gate? A scraping sound jerked him from his thoughts, and he instinctively dove behind a jagged rock. And not a moment too soon. A goblin armed with a crude club shuffled into view. Yep, no doubt about it now. He was inside a dungeon gate. Now everyone knows goblins are supposed to be the weakest of the weak, but that's a total lie. They're way more dangerous than they look. There's a reason they have a nickname, newbie eaters. Their sense of smell is insane, their hearing is razor sharp, and they hunt in relentless, vicious packs. For any fresh hunter who goes in blind, running into these things is a guaranteed death sentence. Crouched behind the rock, the kid held his breath, praying the goblin wouldn't spot him and just move on. However, something felt off. The goblin's primal instinct screamed danger as its ears twitched, and its snout tasted the air. This creature was born to hunt. It caught his scent. Human. The monster began to stalk forward, slow and menacing. Our boy knew he had to act, and he had to act now. His hand wrapped around a jagged rock. He prayed that all the theories he'd studied would actually work in the real world, because he was fresh out of other options. This was it. Every skill he'd honed while dreaming of the day he'd become a hunter was about to be put to the ultimate test. He launched the stone. It clattered against the far wall, echoing behind the goblin. The beast froze its ugly head, whipping around to pinpoint the source of the disturbance. That was his chance. He burst from the shadows, clamping down on the goblin's sword arm with one hand, while his other slammed the rock into the side of the creature's skull. With a sickening crack, the monster's head snapped to the side. He stared, completely stunned. One move. He'd actually taken down a goblin in a single move. The technique he practiced. It had actually worked. But hold on. The sheer force behind his blow felt wrong. All he wanted to do was knock the weapon away, maybe scare it off, not pulverize it. Our hero, clutching the fallen sword, wondered if this was it, if he was truly a hunter now. Just then, a system message materialized in his vision. The fallen angel has taken an interest in you. His blood ran cold. The fallen angel. That could only be the Demon King. Before he could even process it, the cavern filled with movement. The sounds of their fight had drawn a crowd. A whole pack of monsters swarmed from the darkness. Why were there so many of them? And worse, towering behind the horde was a hulking beast, radiating pure menace, the Goblin Chief, the dungeon's boss. Our hero's heart plummeted. This was the end. He had just awakened his powers. He stood zero chance against a freaking dungeon boss. The words of his bald-headed master echoed in his mind. Men don't cry. Even back then, he had faced his trials head-on and crushed them. He remembered his master holding a book, asking him, if you gained the power to change the world, would you have the will to see it through? And his answer back then was instant. Of course, if he ever got that kind of power, he would absolutely change this broken world. That memory ignited a fire within him. His grip on the sword tightened with both hands. No, he had no right to die in a place like this. He couldn't check out until he'd reshaped the world. Besides, the freaking Demon King had his eyes on him now. This was a test, a once-in-a-lifetime chance that most people never get. It almost felt like the fallen angel was giving him a standing ovation for his fighting spirit. A roar ripped from his throat as he charged straight into the swarm. He became a blur of motion, his new sword carving through any goblin foolish enough to stand in his way. There was no fear, no second thoughts, just pure, relentless survival. Then one goblin, way faster than the rest, darted under his swing. It got dangerously close, swinging a crude club for his head, but even this nimble enemy was instantly cut down. A notification flashed before his eyes. Level up. His mind raced back to his spear, training to his bald master, looking on in disbelief, muttering, simply incredible. Looking at you, his master had said, I finally understand what a true genius is. Most people have a ceiling they can never break through. But a student with a patron's blessing, they could become a hunter without equal. That thought fueled his rampage, and soon the last of the bloodthirsty goblins hit the floor. Silence fell. Only our hero and one other creature remained standing. The Goblin Chief. The final boss was all that was left. But he knew that even if it was just a goblin, he couldn't underestimate the alpha. The official guidelines are clear: to challenge a Goblin Chief, you need to be a C-rank hunter at minimum. Anything less is a death sentence. He thought about his own power. He'd just awakened. At best, he was a bottom-of-the-barrel F rank. How could someone like him, a total newbie, possibly defeat a monster on that level? But he had no other choice. The young man, spear now in hand, decided to bet it all on a single, decisive strike. The fallen angel seemed to approve, granting him a new authority, power over fire. This spear was a relic of the Demon King himself, and easily the most powerful weapon he had. Now our hero finally had the right to unlock its true potential. He burst forward, a comet of righteous fury, thrusting the now flaming spear toward the boss. The blazing tip plunged deep into the monster's flesh. The force of the attack was catastrophic. It tore straight through the creature's body, leaving a massive, smoldering crater in its wake. The young man could hardly believe his eyes. Did he really just do that? A new notification confirmed his kill and another level up, but it came with a price. Spear durability has dropped to 0. Pain flared across his own body. He was wounded, and his energy was plummeting. He had poured every last ounce of himself into that final attack. His vision tunneled to black as he crumpled to the ground, blood pooling beneath him. Much later, a team of hunters finally breached the dungeon. Their jaws dropped. What in the world could have caused this level of destruction? The entire dungeon was wiped out. Even the boss was dead. One of the hunters spotted a figure on the ground. "Hey," he yelled, "we've got a survivor over here." In spite of his grave injuries, our protagonist's eyes fluttered open in a hospital room. He was alive, somehow recovering from the brink of death. An array of medical machines were hooked into his body, their rhythmic beeps confirming he was stable. He blinked, realizing with a heavy heart that none of it had been a dream. Without warning, a woman materialized in his room. Athena. Her hand was reaching for the prize he'd claimed, the autobiography of the Demon King. The memories came rushing back, being stabbed by Sun Gyun, waking up inside that gate, and the desperate battle against the Goblin Chief that nearly claimed his life. Yet he was still here. He had survived all thanks to that newfound power over fire. From the fallen angel before his world faded to black, his body ravaged by devastating wounds. Did the hunters who breached the gate somehow pull him from the brink? A nurse glides into the room, insisting he stay put. She fires off a series of questions. How's he feeling? Any dizziness? Is he hungry? The girl clarifies that it was hunters from a top-tier guild who stumbled upon him and rushed him to safety. Without their intervention, his fate would have been sealed. The nurse stresses just how wrecked his body was. He's insanely lucky to be alive. And since he was caught up in a gate incident, someone from the Hunters Association is scheduled to drop by. For now, all he can do is rest. But the young man's voice is raspy as he asks the nurse a single chilling question. What year is it? The nurse figures his memory must be scrambled from the trauma. He's probably still out of it. She tells him the current year is 2022. The information shatters our hero's reality. That's a full 100 years before he was even born. How is this even possible? The gates first tore open in 2020, and by 2022, a wave of powerful hunters was starting to emerge. It was the dawn of a heroic age. His bald mentor Sun Gu Yuan once told him that hunters eventually saw themselves as gods ruling over the powerless masses. People as weak as him were treated like cattle, their lives hanging on the whims of others. Our hero realizes that unlike his time, where you had to become a chosen Eden to get strong, this was an era where hunters got their power directly from patrons. He grasps that he, too, has been given this insane opportunity. Adrenaline surging, the protagonist swings his legs off the bed, assuring the nurse he feels solid. The vertigo has vanished. He'd crushed a chocolate bar from the nightstand, and now feels totally steady on his feet. The young man steps into the bathroom and stares at his reflection. Is that really him? He was never this built. Now his back is a wall of muscle and he's shot up to almost 6 feet tall. He concludes that while his face is the same, the physique staring back at him looks like it belongs to a completely different person. A sharp knock echoes from the door. A voice calls out, asking if he's decent. A visitor has arrived. Feeling refreshed after a quick shower, our protagonist is ready to face whoever is on the other side. The guest is an agent from the association, a woman named Kim Soo-yeon. She confirms that after the gate incident, he was rescued by the High League Guild. She then mentions the medical staff's report about his memory loss and asks if it's true. The association rep starts probing what's the last thing he remembers, any info on his family, and what was he doing at the gate. Apparently after he was brought in, the association dug for info on him, but came up completely empty. Our hero knows he can't breathe a word about being from the future. His amnesia is the perfect cover easily explained by his awakening, or the trauma. He tells her he's 23 years old, and gives his name as Lee Jun-kyung. For some reason, the Demon King's name just rolls off his tongue. He doesn't know why, but it just feels right. Lee Jun-kyung states that's all he can recall. Kim Soo-yeon tells him not to worry about it. The association agent then asks what he experienced inside the gate. He tells her he heard a voice, one that called itself his patron. Kim Soo-yeon's expression becomes serious. She nods. Mr. Lee Jun-kyung, she says, you are now a hunter. Do you know what that means? He guesses they're like some kind of chosen ones. The agent thanks him for his time, mentioning that other staff members might visit later on. She assures him the association will be in touch. Kim Soo-yeon gives him a deep bow, noting he must be overwhelmed. But that Lee Jun-kyung has just become an incredibly important person in this world. She wishes him luck and departs. Staring out the window, Lee Jun-kyung thinks about how formal she was. It's time. Our hero decides to check his status. He summons one of the Demon King's abilities. The system window flashes to life, revealing his trait player and his title Goblin Slayer. It all clicks into place. This is why the 12 heroes were so desperate to contain the Demon King. He leveled up at a terrifying rate, and they were so spooked by his potential that they tried to erase him from history. The Demon King was built different. He wasn't just a hunter, he was a player. While others needed patrons to grant them power, he could grind his way to the top all on his own, without anyone's help. He was a singularity, the only one who grew stronger just by hunting. The Demon King. And now he, Lee Jun-kyung, has inherited that game-breaking power. The nurse returns beaming and congratulates Mr. Lee Jun-kyung on becoming a hunter. He gives her a polite thank you, but he's genuinely confused. Is becoming a hunter really something to celebrate? The girl enthusiastically confirms it. Even a bottom-tier F-rank hunter can make an insane amount of money, more than a normal person could ever dream of. And even without fighting a single monster, countless doors swing open for them. You could become a world-class blacksmith, for instance, who can forge legendary items by pumping them with pure mana. Or you could be a bodyguard for the super-rich, with a waiting list of billionaires, begging to hire you. Lee Jun-kyung thought he had the system all figured out. After all, if you're not one of the chosen, you're doomed to be a nobody. So why did this feel so wrong? The nurse handed him a bag, explaining it was from some guy from the Hunters Association named Kim Soo-yeon. Inside were the clothes he was wearing during the whole portal incident. They figured it was best to hang on to them, just in case he ever needed them. Lee Jun-kyung walked out of the hospital and into the dizzying center of the city, just trying to take it all in. This was the era of heroes. Gangnam, a place his old self couldn't have even afforded to breathe in. Lee Jun-kyung couldn't help but notice how bright and unnervingly peaceful everything seemed. That's when Kim Soo-yeon, the association rep, walked right up to him, saying he'd been waiting. The suit from the association urged him to tag along. He made it clear that it wasn't safe for a newly awakened hunter to just be wandering around, but told him not to sweat it. The second he was registered, they'd hook him up with some seriously nice apartments. Kim Soo-yeon even congratulated him before the results were in. The test flashed back S rank. In the entire country, almost no one awakens with a rank that high. Shook Kim Soo-yeon ushered him into a luxury car, saying they'd hash out the details after he was officially in the system. Typically, when people awaken, they pull an F rank, maybe an E, if they get lucky. The hunter ranks are a straight shot, up the alphabet. The higher the letter, the more insane opportunities you get, and the more society basically worships you. Kim Soo-yeon confirmed that the registration was complete, and led Lee Jun-kyung to the apartment that was now his. The kid stepped inside the door, and was totally blindsided by the decor. It looked like something out of a history book. Still, he managed to say, "Wow, I actually really dig this." He thought to himself that this day was unreal. He was finally a hunter. For the first time in his entire life, he had a real home. Just then, Kim Soo-yeon mentioned someone important wanted to meet him. Our hero was totally thrown. Seriously, someone wants to meet him. Who could it possibly be? There was no way anyone here knew. He was from the future. Kim Soo-yeon explained, it was the leader of the High League Guild, the very same guys who saved him. They were apparently really interested in him, but he could totally turn them down if he wasn't feeling the meeting. The association rep added that this guild was a massive deal, constantly grabbing headlines. A moment later, Kim Soo-yeon was introducing them. The guild leader's name was Sun Gu-yuan, and the first thing he said was that Jun-kyung was tall. They needed guys with his build. That's when our hero realized he recognized the man. That bald head was burned into his memory. Sun Gu-yuan caught his stare. "What are you looking at, kid?" Lee Jun-kyung snapped out of it, averting his eyes. The kid stammered that he wasn't trying to be rude. It just sort of happened. He mentally kicked himself. He had almost messed up big time. He'd been completely caught off guard. Who would have guessed? He'd meet his mentor from the future. This damn soon. Sun Gu-yuan just brushed it off, saying it was fine. But then he squinted. "Have we met before?" For some reason, he said Lee Jun-kyung just seemed familiar. Jun-kyung quickly fired back that he'd lost all his memories after his awakening, so he really had no idea. Our hero then gave a deep bow, thanking the bald man for saving his life, and for his team's help. Jun-kyung was thinking, I'm looking at a living legend who's going to close down countless gates, a man who will save millions. Sun Gu-yuan just thought he was a very well-mannered young man. Lee Jun-kyung knew better. He was looking at a forgotten hero, someone the world would eventually believe was dead. Heimdall, Sun Gu-yuan. Here they were, reunited. Lying on the bed in his new apartment, our hero stared at his own hand. This is real, he thought. All of this is real. But his body felt off, like it wasn't his own. Then he spotted the familiar pattern of moles on his skin, confirming that this was, without a doubt, his body. Lee Jun-kyung's system showed he had the traits of a player, a demon king, a hunter, not of this world. He was also a forgotten king. The kid had no clue why he'd inherited the powers of a demon king. He guessed it was because a fallen angel had become his sponsor. But what became of the original demon king? Our hero knew nothing beyond that. He figured answers weren't coming anytime soon. Lee Jun-kyung let the reality sink in. He had traveled back in time and been given the single most broken ability imaginable. He had been handed the power, a power that could reshape the entire world for the better. Cut to the Hunters Association training class, where a bunch of rookies wait for their teacher. A man in dark sunglasses strolls into the auditorium and addresses the room. He introduces himself as Bae Sang-soo, one of their new instructors. A murmur shot through the crowd. Were they serious? Could that really be the Bae Sang-soo? A B-rank hunter. Scouting. Seriously, rumor had it, the association itself was looking for fresh talent among them. For most of these trainees, this was their big break. If they could just catch someone's eye, they could score a spot with the association or a top-tier guild. That was the dream everyone was chasing. Their instructor, Bae Sang-soo, kicked off the day by announcing a special hunter seminar. The plan was simple. Choose your weapon, then jump straight into a combat evaluation. But hey, no need to stress about it. He tossed a question out to the class. Does anyone here actually know how a hunter's awakening works? One of the trainees guessed you had to be chosen by some kind of supernatural patron. Bae Sang-soo gave a sharp nod. That was the gist of it. A hunter's base power level is locked in the moment they awaken. However, he continued, hunters can level up. So who can tell me how that's possible? A student shot her hand up, explaining it was either by clearing gates or pulling off some major achievement that gets your patron's attention. You can also get special skills or items from additional support, she added. An excellent answer, Baek Sang-soo praised. He could tell they all came prepared. All right then, he smirked, time for a real curveball. What is a patron's ultimate goal? And just like that, dead silence. It was the one question every hunter wonders about, but nobody has the answer to. Who are these patrons really, and why do they bother choosing regular people and turning them into hunters? Baek Sang-soo's gaze drifted over to one specific trainee. He couldn't figure this kid out. While everyone else was desperate for the spotlight, this guy couldn't seem to care less. You, the instructor called out. How about you answer the question, Baek Sang-soo made it clear that any theory was on the table. There was no right or wrong answer. He was genuinely curious about this kid's perspective. Surprised, Lee Jun-kyung finally looked up. Isn't it all just some kind of entertainment for them? Baek Sang-soo's eyebrow shot up. Entertainment? What exactly are you getting at? Lee Jun-kyung spelled it out plainly. They pick a character to go hunt monsters. The patrons get a thrill out of watching that character grind and power up. It's basically a game. The thought chilled him. The Demon King had assumed the patrons saw their world as nothing more than a game too. And despite all the insane power the Demon King had acquired, that one critical assumption still led to his death. One thing was certain, the patrons guarded their secrets with everything they had. The scene shifts to the arena, where the first challenger, a girl with a blade, stood ready. An excellent choice, Instructor Baek Sang-soo commented. She'd picked a sword. With a firm nod, the girl confirmed she was ready for the lesson to begin. But you could see a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Baek Sang-soo's voice boomed. You will be fighting a starved goblin. Its eyes were glowing a demonic red. And listen, he added, it doesn't matter if you can't beat it. I'll decide whether you pass or fail. Baek Sang-soo then mentioned the goblin had been brainwashed, so it couldn't actually kill a person or inflict any life-threatening wounds. The test began. The goblin exploded from its cage, immediately lunging at its opponent. But the girl didn't flinch, charging head-on to meet the monster. The young hunter's sword became a blur of silver. The goblin couldn't land a single hit. In a flash, the creature vanished, reappearing behind the girl and screeching as it dove in for an attack. This could be dangerous, Baek Sang-soo thought. But in a split second, the girl whipped around her blade, slicing the goblin clean in two at the waist. One swift, perfect swing. After the fight, the completely exhausted and emotionally drained hunter collapsed onto the arena floor. The severed parts of the monster lay scattered around her. Impressive, Baek Sang-soo declared. To pull off a counter in a situation like that and obliterate the goblin. That was masterful. She passes. And with that, the final contestant was called forward. Lee Jun-kyung stepped into the ring. In his hands were a spear and a shield. Baek Sang-soo found himself thinking that the combination was a little weird. Our hero knew this test was the only thing standing between him and getting into the advanced graduation courses. If he could prove his worth right now, the rewards would be huge. The instructor's voice cut through the tension. The final test will now begin. Unfortunately, he said with a slight smirk, we seem to have run out of goblins. So your test will be against a different monster. And since your opponent has changed, the rules are changing too. You don't need to kill this one. Just earn my approval and you'll pass. Baek Sang-soo also reminded him that this monster was brainwashed too, so it can't inflict any serious injuries. Besides, as long as a B-rank hunter like me is here, nothing's going to go wrong. Jun-kyung figured his opponent would probably be a kobold, since they were about as strong as goblins. I'm ready, the young man stated, his voice steady. Good, the instructor replied. In that case, let's begin. He then added, I was impressed by your answer during the seminar. I hope you don't disappoint me in here. But the monster that stomped into the arena wasn't a kobold. It was an orc. This beast had the raw strength of 2 adult men, and absolutely insane vitality. On the giant screens, the other trainees could only watch their jaws on the floor. Every hunter watching the monitor did a collective double take. An orc, in a training simulation. Since when was that a thing? Baek Sang-soo explained that this little surprise was thanks to a certain B-rank hunter who had appeared straight out of nowhere. This guy was already one of the most powerful hunters on the planet. Meanwhile, Lee Jun-kyung, a fresh C-rank, had just single-handedly wiped the floor with a swarm of goblins. And he even took down their leader inside a D-rank gate. How was it possible for a rookie to pull off something so legendary right at the start of his career? The association knew they couldn't let a gem like him just walk away. The fallen angel locked his gaze onto Lee Jun-kyung, watching every move. The orc charged a blur of green fury, but was instantly met with a spear that tore into its shoulder. A blood-curdling scream ripped through the air as the monster recoiled in agony. Lee Jun-kyung scoffed, thinking he was up against some brainless brute, who just charges in with pure strength and zero strategy. The kid figured this would be an easy clap. But then his spear got lodged deep in the beast's flesh, refusing to budge. As Lee Jun-kyung yanked on the shaft, he felt the insane raw power of the orc pushing back. The spectators were freaking out. Isn't this way too over the top? The instructor needs to shut this down like right now. Even Baek Sang-soo had to give him props. The kid's opening strike was textbook perfect. If that had been a normal person instead of an orc, they would have been dead on the spot. But everyone had seriously underestimated this monster. Lee Jun-kyung was thrown on the defensive, his shield now his only hope. Okay, safety first. Baek Sang-soo's mind raced. If he didn't step in, this could get ugly fast. The magic sword flared to life. The colossal beast swung to crush its opponent, but our hero was a phantom expertly weaving and dodging every single attack. Seizing the perfect opening, Lee Jun-kyung launched a brutal kick that connected squarely with the monster's skull. The beast staggered from the concussive force. It was a critical hit, dealing massive damage. The hunters glued to the widescreen panel were shook. Who even is this kid? Is he really a newbie? One of the hunters pointed out how the kid had used the leverage from his stuck spear to throw the orc completely off balance. He literally schooled that orc in the middle of a class. The mentor's mind was blown. Was that a skill? A freshly awakened hunter with abilities like that? He didn't even chant an incantation, which meant it had to be some kind of high-tier passive skill. Suddenly, the shield's durability plummeted to 0. This had never happened before in the entire history of the hunter era. In that instant, the young man leveled up. His fire mastery surged to level 2. The monster was completely annihilated. Baek Sang-soo knew right then they could not lose this prospect. They had to get him into the association, no matter what it took. The mentor just muttered, "Unbelievable. Hunter Lee Jun-kyung, you've passed the evaluation." The protagonist gave the instructor a nod of thanks, his mind already racing. That fire ability was seriously overpowered. It wasn't just a skill, it was the core of the demonic control he once wielded. From the very start of his hunter journey, this was more than a simple skill. It was true power, totally different from what normal hunters possessed. Unlike regular skills that needed a patron to get stronger, this one could be leveled up through his own stats. There was a catch, though his current gear couldn't handle that kind of raw power. To even use the skill, he'd need equipment forged from, at least, a high-strength metal. Later, the rookies all met up to chill. Sung-hyun felt kinda awkward, wondering if he even belonged there. Lee Jun-kyung just clapped him on the back and said, "Of course he did. This was a housewarming party after all." The chill hangout then moved over to the hero's apartment. They kicked back with some food, chatting about the seminar and the big test coming up the next day. They also talked about all the places they wanted to check out. Kim Soo-yeon, their appointed curator, then brought them back to reality. He reminded everyone that the final evaluation was going down tomorrow. It was going to be a live test inside a real gate. But he was confident Lee Jun-kyung would have 0 issues. Song Guiyan then cut in, asking what Lee Jun-kyung had decided about his little proposition. The guildmaster made it clear he wasn't about to let a talent like this slip through his fingers. Kim Soo-yeon noticed it immediately. The whole vibe at the table shifted, getting super intense. One of the biggest guilds in the country was trying to poach this guy. It was a golden ticket, a once-in-a-lifetime shot. For Lee Jun-kyung, that is. But our hero looked him in the eye and said he'd have to pass. The guildmaster was stunned, asking for a reason. He just couldn't process the rejection. For anyone aiming to be a hunter and live that life, the offer was a dream come true. But Lee Jun-kyung had thought this through. When he'd returned to the past, he ran every possible simulation for his future. And any scenario where he got too tangled up with Song Guiyan spelled disaster. The hero explained that he wasn't looking to join any organization right now. But he added if Song Guiyan was ever in a bind and needed backup, he'd be there in a heartbeat. At least until he'd paid back the debt for being saved. Kim Soo-yeon was completely lost. Was this rookie seriously offering to help one of the most powerful A-rank hunters in the world? Just then, an announcement blared, signaling the start of the final exam. Baek Sang-soo stepped forward, saying he had a few words about the exam procedure. The location would be an actual gate, but he told them not to stress. The instructor added that he would be going in right alongside them. Our hero knew the mentor was a B-rank hunter, whose magical aura alone dwarfed everyone else in the room. Baek Sang-soo laid it out, plain and simple. Once they had their supplies locked down, they were bouncing from the gate. Lee Jun-kyung geared up with his standard loadout, a spear and a shield. But the moment he stepped through the portal, the air went thick, like trying to breathe through honey. And that heavy, soupy feeling wasn't just in his head. Baek Sang-soo clocked it immediately, explaining that the intense magical energy inside the gate was causing it. The mentor's voice was grim. "When we find monsters, you follow my lead to the letter." As they pushed deeper into the dungeon's guts, Baek Sang-soo threw up a hand signal, absolute silence. Up ahead, a crew of monsters armed to the teeth had already formed a defensive perimeter, ready to throw down with the hunters. "They're moving in," the instructor announced, his voice, a low growl. He gave the order to the hunters. "Get ready to engage." Hunters number 1 and 3 immediately dropped into their combat stances. With a white-knuckle grip on their weapons, the hunters braced for impact as they clashed with the first wave, shattering the creatures. With a guttural war cry, hunter number 3 finished off his target. The instructor then barked out hunters 8 and 16, "You're up." Those two moved with the same brutal confidence and skill, completely wiping out the next wave of monsters. Alright, Lee Jun-kyung back, Sang-soo called out, show us what you've got. In the blink of an eye, our hero exploded forward, a sudden blur of motion. His teammates didn't even have time to track his movement. Lee Jun-kyung blitzed through the green-skinned enemies like a hurricane. Every monster he zipped past was obliterated with a single, perfect strike. Lee Jun-kyung only skidded to a halt when his mission was 100% complete. The rest of the team just stared their jaws on the floor at his insane speed and sheer guts. One of them whispered in disbelief, "No way! Isn't that the new guy who just awakened? What is he even doing here in training?" Baek Sang-soo thought to himself that Jun-kyung's weapon handling was absolutely off the charts. He's already on par with a B-rank hunter. We can't let him get away. We have to recruit this prodigy. A notification dinged. The hunter's level had increased. The training squad, with Baek Sang-soo at the front, ventured further into the cavern. The mentor warned, the boss room is right around the corner. But this thing is a whole different beast than the goblins we've been fighting, so you better be on your A game. Baek Sang-soo reminded them to get prepped, chug their potions, and double-check their weapons and armor. Meanwhile, Lee Jun-kyung was lost in thought about the Demon King. The guy had the power of a player but got wrecked by the 12 heroes before he could even hit his power spike. That never would have happened if he had just leveled up faster than them. The answer was crystal clear to Lee Jun-kyung. He had to do whatever it took to get stronger, way stronger than the 12 heroes of Eden, stronger than anyone. Baek Sang-soo snapped. We're moving out, and as they pressed forward, the hunters started to feel it. Something was dead wrong. Our hero was shook. What was this crushing magical pressure that was bearing down on all of them? An urgent command came from the senior officer. Everyone retreat immediately. Get to the gates, run. As the others turned to flee, Baek Sang-soo charged toward the threat just as a massive fireball came screaming out of the darkness. The mentor knew he needed to dodge. But if he moved, the recruits behind him would get roasted. Baek Sang-soo planted his feet, spun around, and activated his poisonous fang skill. The mentor whipped out his daggers, preparing to meet the cataclysmic attack head-on. But his poisonous fangs couldn't completely negate the blast. Baek Sang-soo glanced over his shoulder, expecting the worst for the rookies. But they were completely untouched. Whatever the poisonous fangs couldn't stop, Lee Jun-kyung had just absorbed with his shield. Everyone was okay. He saw that Lee Jun-kyung was standing firm in front of all the rookies, holding a protective stance over the other students. The mentor could only say, "Hunter, Lee Jun-kyung, you are absolutely unreal." The young man replied that he only pulled it off because the instructor had already soaked up most of the fire blast. A notification popped up. The fallen angel was requesting the player to eliminate the great goblin sorcerer. The hunters laid eyes on the beast, a monster that could easily clap a B-rank hunter. Are you kidding me? This is a low-level gate. The danger rating is so far off it's not even funny. No matter what, we have to bail. The only person here who stands a chance is Baek Sang-soo. He admitted that even for him, the great goblin sorcerer would be a seriously tough fight. All hunters exit the gate and radio for backup. But then, Lee Jun-kyung walked right up to the instructor and said he wanted to take on the great goblin sorcerer. Baek Sang-soo shot back, "Don't get ahead of yourself, kid. I know you smoked a bunch of goblins and even an orc, but the great goblin sorcerer's power comes from its magic, not its fists. Its spells can vaporize a B-rank hunter." Lee Jun-kyung calmly stated that he knew exactly how powerful the monster was, and more importantly, he knew how to fight it. Yeah, the great goblin sorcerer was a solid B-rank threat. It was a master of fire magic. Its main moves were fire arrows, fireballs, walls of fire, and shields of flame. Our hero looked his mentor dead in the eye and asked, "Are all the monsters in here really designed for rookies to be able to defeat them?" That's why he wants to shoot his shot, but Sang-soo is just thinking, what is this delusional confidence still? He lets him cook. The kid unleashes a torrent of raw firepower, blasting it straight at the great goblin sorcerer. His opponent, completely blindsided by the sudden aggression, is visibly shook. The hunter mutters that this can't be the same Lee Jun-kyung he knew. He doesn't just block the fireball, he freaking redirects it right back. As a pro, Baek Sang-soo realizes with dawning horror that Lee Jun-kyung didn't block it. He absorbed it. But how the great goblin sorcerer frantically scrambles to throw up defensive magic circles, trying to shield himself from the rogue hunter's onslaught. A massive firewall erupts between them, a raging inferno that seems completely impassable. In that instant, the other hunters know they've made a huge mistake. They are so out of their league. They're about to get absolutely nuked by long-range magic. But Lee Jun-kyung isn't backing down an inch. In fact, he's just getting started. The great goblin sorcerer desperate pulls another move from his playbook. Our boy instantly clocks the clone jutsu. But Lee Jun-kyung was ready for it. The kid throws up a pocket around himself, a dead zone, totally immune to the sorcerer's oppressive fire magic. Lee Jun-kyung remarks that this fire control is on another level, and then blitzes straight through the inferno toward his enemy. He's on the goblin in a flash, turning its entire body into a pincushion of pain. His fellow trainees can't believe their eyes. Lee Jun-kyung actually did it. The newbie. He really took down the great goblin sorcerer. The fallen angel is absolutely vibing with this super rookie's epic performance. A notification flashes, mission accomplished. And for pulling off the impossible, the fallen angel officially becomes Lee Jun-kyung's patron. The young man takes the news in stride. Our hero has just unlocked another piece of the Demon King's legendary power set. Baek Sang-soo makes a beeline to report everything directly to the association president. The president just assumes the instructor wants to debrief about the chaos that went down during the final test. He has no idea. The president confirms that every last detail Baek Sang-soo reported is legit. That means there's not a second to lose. The president asks the instructor point blank, just how high is this kid's ceiling? Baek Sang-soo suggests that the ultimate goal the president has been chasing might actually be within reach now. The president decides this is now the #1 priority. He needs to meet this kid as soon as possible. Lee Jun-kyung is a little surprised when he sees that the others have already arrived. Kim Soo-yeon explains he's been waiting for the hunter alongside the head of the High League Guild. Kim Soo-yeon admits he was sweating bullets. He'd heard the gate the hunter entered suddenly spiked from an E rank to a C rank, but apparently that didn't slow him down at all. Song Gui-young cuts right to the chase, asking if Lee Jun-kyung got an invitation to join the association. And yep, our hero confirms he got the offer. The other hunters are floored. They tried to recruit him into the association. No way. Lee Jun-kyung just apologizes, explaining that he's not really looking to affiliate with any group at the moment. He knows joining the association would fast-track his growth, but it would also put him under a microscope, where he couldn't hide a thing. Lying low is his entire game plan, especially considering he's a time traveler from the future. Lee Jun-kyung figures the association president is just another major player in the system. He absolutely cannot get tangled up with him. He has to dodge the guy whatever it takes. Song Gui-young switches gears and asks a more personal question. Does the young man have any food he's into? This question somehow feels way more complicated than the whole association business. After a moment of intense deliberation, he replies that he likes ramen. Song Gui-young says that settles it, promising to treat him to a proper feast with plenty of meat. After that dungeon crawl, the first thing on our hero's agenda is a desperately needed shower. Lee Jun-kyung reflects on the insane power-ups he's gained since being yeeted into the past. He needs to check his status window, like now. He's now level 11, and thanks to the Fallen Angel's patronage, he can summon a single familiar. Summoning is not a skill your average hunter has. Only 12 legendary heroes have ever possessed this power. It's this very ability that allowed him to pull off all those insane feats. It's no wonder he managed to wreck the Bone Dragons Balrog and even Cerberus. Lee Jun-kyung realizes he's inheriting the exact same powers the Demon King once wielded. The familiars he'll summon will be just as OP as the Demon Kings were. The system has granted him one guaranteed summon, a gift from the Fallen Angel. The kid activates the summon. Just then, Kim Soo-yeon tells Lee Jun-kyung to check out the information popping up on his smartphone. It's an entire feed dedicated to him. Kim Soo-yeon had heard the rumors that Lee Jun-kyung took down the great goblin sorcerer. How did he do it, and why didn't he say anything sooner? Lee Jun-kyung was floored to see his face plastered on the front page, even if his personal details were completely blacked out. Of course, the top brass at the association, they already had the full scoop. Kim Soo-yeon casually mentioned that hunters were blowing up even more popular than most idols now. But you could tell the kid couldn't care less. Look, Lee Jun-kyung cut in, there are way bigger things I need to talk about. That definitely got Kim Soo-yeon's attention. The young man laid it out plain and simple he wanted back in the dungeons. He got his wish diving into gate after gate, and absolutely crushing every mission. He was even leveling up. The problem? Nothing. No reaction from the monsters he annihilated. Not even the final boss. How was he supposed to use them? He figured a familiar had to be either insanely powerful or have some kind of special cheat code skill, but after all that, he still hadn't absorbed a single soul. This entire time our hero was convinced he needed monster souls. Was his whole theory just wrong? After clearing yet another dungeon, Kim Soo-yeon was there to give him a pat on the back. The association rep pointed out that this was Lee Jun-kyung's 4th successful raid. He then asked if he had any loot to unload at the auction. The young man handed over his haul of trophy weapons. Kim Soo-yeon was impressed, noting how the kid mastered everything instantly, like he was born for this. As soon as the gear sold, the cash would be wired straight to Lee Jun-kyung's crypto account. Our hero just had one question. When can I hit the next gate? His contact shook his head. There are no more gates available to book. Lee Jun-kyung was stunned. The world was literally crawling with gates that no one could close, and he couldn't even reserve one. How was that even possible? Kim Soo-yeon explained, that some new guild just popped up and was making major moves. They had somehow managed to reserve about 20 low-level gates all for themselves. Lee Jun-kyung's mind raced. Even if they're low-rank gates, How could one guild possibly lock down all 20? Kim Soo-yoon confirmed it was sketchy. Normally, the association would shut that down immediately. But since the guild had a track record of clearing the gates they reserved ahead of schedule, the association's hands were tied. They had to greenlight the request. Lee Jun-kyung's voice was tight. Is the leader of this guild named Choi Yoon-seon? The man's face confirmed it. Kim Soo-yoon added that it was the Northern Army Guild founded by Choi Yoon-seon himself. Apparently, he was the original super rookie before Lee Jun-kyung exploded onto the scene. And Jun-kyung knew that name all too well. This man, he was destined to be hailed as a hero, a loyal soldier under the command of the 12 gods. But he would also become infamous as a merciless killer, an absolute tyrant. Lee Jun-kyung thought grimly, so it begins. He remembered the god of war, Gunther. He remembered peaceful citizens pouring into the streets, begging for construction to halt, screaming for their lives to be protected. Not even the pouring rain could silence their desperate protests. An aide frantically reported to his master that the riots were spiraling out of control. What were his orders? Gunther scoffed. They were nothing but ants. If their nests were crushed here, they'd just scurry off and build new ones somewhere else. Why should he care about the lives of a few insects? Gunther sneered, calling the protesters pathetic slaves. He'd already granted them the privilege of surviving. The fact they demanded more was insulting. As Lee Jun-kyung walked through that same city, the memory was a gut punch. After this incident, half the residents of his village were wiped out. A horrific, pointless tragedy. His thoughts were shattered by a cry for help. An old man was pleading with some thugs. How can you do this? Just because you're hunters. One of the punks answered by kicking the old man's cart, splintering the wood. Stop this madness, the old man begged. This is wrong. That was it. Lee Jun-kyung wasn't about to let this slide. Time to deliver some justice. He strode over to the old man. What are these clowns up to? One of the thugs squared up. And who the hell are you? I heard some shady noises and came to check it out, Lee Jun-kyung said coolly. Are you two actually trying to shake down this old man? The guy puffed out his chest. How dare you talk to me like that? A dangerous glint flashed in our hero's eyes. You two started this. The thugs paused, a flicker of doubt in their eyes. This guy might be a hunter. Probably not someone you want to mess with. Lee Jun-kyung ignored them and turned to the victim. What happened here? The bully immediately started spinning a story. This geezer slammed his cart into my precious body. Yeah, his buddy chimed in. We're just demanding fair compensation. The old man was furious. That's a complete lie. You know that's not what happened. They kicked my cart first, and then started getting physical with me. Lee Jun-kyung's voice dropped ice cold with rage. Why did you break this man's cart? The thug smirked like he was explaining something to a child. Hey, you're a hunter, right? You get it. Anyone who attacks me is my enemy. So what's the big deal about breaking some old cart? You should really watch yourself, man, the thug added with a sneer. He was starting to take the kid's moves as a personal attack. Lee Jun-kyung offered to let them walk since they hadn't touched the old man. The thug's face twisted in rage. How dare some nobody give him orders? The goon lunged at our hero, but Lee Jun-kyung flowed into a close-quarters combat stance and effortlessly deflected the blow. The guy wasn't just blocked. He was thrown, slamming onto the concrete and injuring himself. His buddy responded by pulling a hunting knife. He was ready to fight. Lee Jun-kyung couldn't believe it, thinking he'd never see a weapon in a place like this. Apparently this guy was feeling way too bold about his chances. The goon with the blade, however, was visibly shaking. The villain sneered at his opponent. You don't even have a guild, do you? Then he charged, slashing wildly with his dagger. We're on a completely different level than trash like you. That was the wrong move. A flash of anger crossed Lee Jun-kyung's face as he countered instantly, neutralizing the attacker. The young man scoffed. Judging by your pathetic skills, your guild must be a total joke. After the authorities cuffed the suspects, the ringleader had the nerve to ask our hero if he knew who they were, even trying to claim the old man attacked them first. Just then, Association Representative Kim Soo-yeon arrived and thanked Hunter Lee Jun-kyung for shutting the situation down. Lee Jun-kyung stated coldly that hunters deliberately attacking a civilian is a major offense, and it's punished with the full weight of the law. Kim Soo-yeon added that they have a witness to the whole thing, and the association would handle the rest. Kim Soo-yeon wondered aloud if they needed to worry about the guild trying to get revenge on the elderly man. The association will keep an eye on things, so don't sweat it. But Lee Jun-kyung remembered something. The hunter bragged he was from a guild. Where is this guild located? Kim Soo-yeon's answer was chilling. It was the Northern Army Guild, the same one Lee Jun-kyung had just started investigating. Our hero's mind raced. There's no way they could lock down all the low-level gate contracts without some help from the inside. The Northern Army Guild and the dirty hunters within the association, that was the real problem. He'd hoped they would be smarter about it, but clearly that wasn't happening. 2 days later, just as he'd expected, the protagonist was recruited into the association as a striker. A few days after that, the old man Lee Jun-kyung had rescued completely, flipped his testimony. The attackers were declared innocent. Suddenly, Lee Jun-kyung, the guy who saved the day, was framed as the aggressor and the prime suspect. He knew it was coming, but it still felt like a punch to the gut. Kim Soo-yeon tried to calm him down. Don't worry, it'll all work out in the end. The association isn't that corrupt. Lee Jun-kyung knew Kim Soo-yeon was clueless. As someone from the future, he knew the terrible truth the association had been rotten from the moment it was created. Kim Soo-yeon just gestured for his companion to come inside. The association representative then questioned Hunter, Lee Jun-kyung, about what he recalled from the incident at the gate. The higher-ups were intensely interested in what went down, especially since Lee Jun-kyung was the one who first reported it and took down the members of the Northern Army. The man got straight to the point. Is it true you threatened the life of the elderly Lee Moon-soo? And on top of that, you provided false testimony against the members of the Northern Army Guild about who initiated the attack. Lee Jun-kyung's answer was sharp. That's not true. The representative feigned surprise. Are you suggesting their testimony was fabricated, he asked, proposing a cross-examination. The elderly Lee Moon-soo was escorted into the room. Our hero saw it immediately. In the old man's terrified eyes, he was being blackmailed. Everything in this place was rotten. Just as he feared, Lee Jun-kyung quietly told the old man not to worry. But Lee Moon-soo confirmed the lie, stating that the young man had attacked him. The representative thanked the so-called victim and sent him away, then asked, does Lee Jun-kyung have anything to add in his defense? At that exact moment, a phone started ringing. It belonged to the same Northern Army representative who had been strong-arming the old man. Our hero knew it was over. The association knew exactly why the testimony had changed, but the only person who would face consequences for perjury was the old man. There was nothing Lee Jun-kyung could do in this situation. He just didn't have the power. Later, Sun Gu-yeon met up with our hero, saying he'd heard what happened. Kim Soo-yeon explained that he'd called the guild leader directly, since he no longer had any pull within the association. Lee Jun-kyung thanked them both, saying they must have their own problems to deal with. Sun Gu-yeon insisted that Lee Jun-kyung was already doing great things. Suddenly, a figure approached them. It was the old man Lee Moon-soo. He collapsed to his knees, apologizing to Hunter Lee Jun-kyung with tears flooding his eyes. The old man choked out that those scum had threatened his granddaughter, leaving him with no other option. He couldn't risk her safety. Instead of helping the hunter who saved him, he just dragged him into deeper trouble. Kim Soo-yeon looked on, speechless with outrage. So did the Northern Army strong-arm the old man with threats? And if so, why is he only spilling the tea now? The old man breaks it down. If he'd breathed a word sooner, his granddaughter's life would have been on the line. But the damage was done. The past couldn't be rewritten. All he could do now was beg for forgiveness, which he did, right in front of the guildmaster. Song Gu-yeon immediately shut that down, promising the old man his granddaughter would be untouchable. He would personally see to it. He told the old-timer to stop stressing about those thugs and head home. Our hero, meanwhile, has picked up a crucial habit. He records everything. After getting caught in jams like this time and time again, he knows better than to be caught without proof. From now on, he can't afford to miss a single detail. Suddenly, a figure strides toward him, and he's stunned, saying, well, I never expected to see the leader of one of the biggest guilds out here. They were standing face to face with the super rookie, the one everyone was whispering about. It was the head of the Northern Army himself. Kim Soo-yeon was floored. How could this guy possibly know everything? Was it possible the rat inside the association was his own personal informant? The Northern Army's leader stuck out a hand, introducing himself with a smirk. The name was Choi Young-soo. Song Gu-yeon shook it, playing along with a polite, "Nice to meet you." But then, without releasing his grip, his tone dropped. He delivered a chilling warning. You better check that ego of yours before you make an enemy out of me. And this super rookie. Song Gu-yeon then leaned in closer. Actually, let me rephrase that. You're not even worthy to be his footstool. Tread carefully, he hissed, unless you've got a death wish. Back at base, Kim Soo-yeon was fuming. This is absolute BS. How did they only get a fine? After trying to ruin a civilian's life, Lee Jun-kyung grimly realized that in this world, hunters were becoming untouchable. But the more pressing issue was the old man's fate. Kim Soo-yeon explained that giving false testimony against a hunter is a massive crime. But since Lee Jun-kyung caught the whole shakedown on camera, the Northern Army's goons were officially found in the wrong. The punchline. They got a slap on the wrist, a simple warning, and the main scumbag walked free. Lee Jun-kyung knew instantly that Song Gu-yeon must have pulled some strings. He then asked for an update on the Northern Army. Kim Soo-yeon reported that they've gone completely silent. Lee Jun-kyung found that hard to believe. There's no way they just let it slide. A stone-cold, merciless killer destined to become the god of war Gunther lives by one code, an eye for an eye. There was zero doubt he would come after our hero for this humiliation. Lee Jun-kyung tasked Kim Soo-yeon with a new mission. Keep eyes on the Northern Army's every move. Our hero wasn't about to sit back and wait either. He believed in payback, just as much as the next guy. Later, Song Gu-yeon couldn't hide his surprise at the meeting. He never thought Lee Jun-kyung would hit him up to tackle a gate together. Lee Jun-kyung cut to the chase, explaining this gate was on a whole other level. He needed the full backing of the guild. Song Gu-yeon's face lit up. He declared it a tremendous honor to fight. Alongside the legendary hunter, Lee Jun-kyung, the guild members were buzzing shocked to see the famed super rookie in the flesh. For them, fighting beside Lee Jun-kyung was the opportunity of a lifetime. The young hunters greeted him starstruck and thrilled. Our hero, however, drew a blank. He couldn't recognize a single one of them. And who could blame him? The entire history of the Demon King and every top-tier guild had been wiped clean from the record books. With the pleasantries over, Song Gu-yeon announced, "All right, people, we're descending." He then dropped the bomb. Remember, this is an S-rank gate. Meanwhile, in a dark meeting room, the negotiations were anything but calm. Choi Yong-soo, a high-ranking officer, slammed his fist on the table. "Are we seriously just going to roll over and take this?" he raged. "We were just starting to expand our power, our influence." A knight calmly countered, "Perhaps we should focus on locking down our current territories before we start new conquests. After that last disaster, doesn't it feel like our own members are starting to spin out of control?" This knight was none other than the Northern Army's second-in-command, Jong In-chong. Choi Yong-soo scoffed. "Those lowlifes got what they deserved. Civilians are nothing but cockroaches, only alive because we hunters protect them. And you're telling me we bowed our heads and apologized to those insects?" The knight shot to his feet, his voice shaking with fury. "What did you just say, Choi Yong-soo? You want to step outside and settle this like men?" Enough, a commanding voice boomed, silencing the room. The true head of the Northern Army Guild called them to order, adding, "Yong-soo has a point." The guild leader's voice dripped with venom. "For daring to cross us, they deserve the most severe punishment imaginable. And I, for one, am very interested in seeing it through." The leader smirked, noting that another powerful figure had said the exact same thing. Apparently, he also had a vested interest in this arrogant upstart. "The stage is almost set," he declared. "All you have to do is wait for my signal." Failure isn't an option in the Northern Army, so when the scout reported the dungeon traps were neutralized, it was a green light. The path ahead was clear. The squad commander gave the signal they were pushing forward, sticking to the planned route. But then an ambush explodes from the shadows. Just in the nick of time, a hunter slams his fist down and an earth shield erupts from the ground. Without missing a beat, another hunter winds up and launches a massive fireball, a blazing comet hurtling toward the dungeon freaks, charging them. Lee Jun-kyung watched, completely captivated. The craziest part, these were all skills you could actually learn here. Our hero couldn't believe it. He was seeing top-tier hunters in a real-life battle, something he'd only ever dreamed of. The monsters got absolutely steamrolled, wiped off the map. They never stood a chance. The squad leader's movements were flawless. Watching Sun Gi-yoon in action, Lee Jun-kyung could only think one thing: this guy was on another level. The guildmaster looks at Lee Jun-kyung and says, "Be real with me." He admits the whole call for backup was just a flex, a test to show off his guild's power. Lee Jun-kyung doesn't hesitate. "No cap, the top league is the real deal and you're one of the most incredible leaders I've ever seen." You could just feel the raw power radiating from Sun Gi-yoon, and it was obvious he was low-key holding back his true strength. One of the hunters smirks. "All right, enough about us. We want to see what this super rookie can do." Sun Gi-yoon nods, backing the challenge. Our hero figures there's no point in hiding his power from a guy like Sun Gi-yoon. He grips his spear, the air around him crackling. He dives into a swarm of armed, aggressive monsters, a whirlwind of deadly grace, and comes out the other side without a scratch. The other hunters were completely floored. Wait, how is he popping off skills without a chant? He's already mastered high-level abilities like he was born with them. This isn't a super rookie, he's a prodigy. Every single strike from Lee Jun-kyung finds its mark. The horde of monsters around him just melts away. Sun Gi-yoon realizes that Flaming Spear isn't just an ability, it's a manifestation of pure power. One hunter just shook his head. "Okay, I've seen enough. Super rookie doesn't even begin to cover it. Not even our leader was on that level at his age." The hunter turns to his boss. "Dude, what were you doing? Why isn't this kid in our guild already?" Sun Gi-yoon calmly states that his offer still stands, adding, "Our guild is a powerhouse and we're only getting stronger." Sun Gi-yoon looks at him with a knowing gaze, sensing that the kid has been through hell and back to get to this point. Lee Jun-kyung was stunned. The guild leader just got him understanding his motivations and his ultimate goal on a deep level. Even Heimdall, with all his status, never had that kind of insight. The guild leader's tone then turned serious. "Those scumbags from the Northern Army won't just sit back and watch. But if you join us," he promised, "they wouldn't dare lay a finger on you." Sun Gi-yoon makes his final play, urging Lee Jun-kyung to join the highest league. Before dropping an absolute bombshell, he's willing to give him the guild leader position. The entire squad froze. He didn't offer a vice captain spot, he offered the entire throne. Our protagonist respectfully declines the mind-blowing offer. And Sun Gi-yoon, cool as ever, just nods. He understands. You could see it in his eyes. This kid was playing a much bigger game. Just then, his phone buzzes a priority message from the Hunters Association. They needed his help. The Northern Army and about 100 other hunters were being deployed. Sun Gi-yoon reads the alert. It's a hunter mobilization order. But seeing as the Northern Army is the main force, the whole situation feels sketchy. Lee Jun-kyung's mind raced. Could Choi Young-sun be manipulating the entire association? He knew it right then. This was where he had to start digging. Elsewhere, a knight from the Northern Army stared at the same message, completely shocked. Have we really fallen this far? Choi Young-soo, his friend since they were kids, and his brother, Choi Young-son, they were different people ever since they met that man. The Choi Young-soo he remembered was aggressive, but had a heart of gold. Now he treats ordinary people like they're less than dirt. In the guild leader's eyes, everyone else is just an insect beneath his boot. It doesn't matter if they're civilians or other hunters. If anyone's actions dare to challenge the Northern Army's authority, they're marked for destruction. This guild is a cancer, rotted completely from the core, its honor a distant, forgotten memory. The knight knew deep down that he couldn't just abandon these two, no matter what. Then the same alert buzzed on his smartphone. He was staring at an impossible choice: justice or loyalty. Our hero, as these things usually go, found himself in a desolate industrial zone, facing down a rep from the Northern Army Guild before introducing himself. The knight shot back that he wouldn't be giving his name. A ridiculously reckless move, he thought. He scanned the area. There was no one else here. No way. Did this guy seriously show up to a meet like this? All by himself. Lee Jun-kyung just smirked, confirming it was just the two of them. No backup, no traps. Nothing to sweat about. The knight declared he had only one thing to say to his opponent. You got the mobilization order from the association, he stated. You need to refuse it. Lee Jun-kyung already knew their entire guild was being called up, didn't he? He calmly confirmed that he did. The knight scoffed. Since Jun-kyung was fresh meat, a newly awakened hunter, he probably had no clue how terrifying the big leagues could be, especially the head of the Northern Army Guild. That man was a walking disaster. Running into him on the street was bad news, but stepping through a gate with him, that was a death sentence. A thought clicked in Lee Jun-kyung's mind, so the Northern Army was a guild of chaos. These were the guilds with devils as their patrons, the ones who gave sick commands to slaughter people or cause mass destruction. A guild forged by a group like that could only be called a chaos guild. The knight looked absolutely stunned. What did this kid just say? Lee Jun-kyung fired back. Isn't that what Jung In-chang, your own deputy guildmaster, just told me? If he meant something else, there was zero reason to warn him about the danger. Lee Jun-kyung's expression was clear. He understood everything perfectly. Even after hearing the words Guild of Chaos, the knight was speechless. The knight finally erupted, screaming that Jun-kyung had no right to insult their guild. But the kid just said that Jung In-chang himself must already realize the truth. The Northern Army Guild was rotten to its very soul. The leaders they once believed in were gone, replaced by monsters. The knight's mind was racing. This kid had only been a hunter for a month, but with his insane leveling speed, it was obvious he was already packing the power of an A-ranker, maybe more. Jung In-chang realized this guy knew with absolute certainty that he wouldn't be attacked here. Was he really that good at reading people? This rookie even knew about him. The knight's thoughts spiraled. Who in the world was Lee Jun-kyung? Jung In-chang, codenamed Siegfried, was a legendary dragon slayer, but his most famous title was the Almighty Siegfried. He was the one who had stared down the most feared monster of all, the Demon King, and actually won. After that victory, his patron granted him a power beyond belief, an eternity to continue the battle against the Demon King. But on the orders of his closest friend Choi Young-sun, his path to heroism was shattered, and he was ultimately destroyed by Choi Young-soo. Lee Jun-kyung knew he had to win this man over to his side. Sure, he had the strength and the skills, but the real prize was his moral compass. In the corrupt hellscape of the Northern Army, he was the only one holding things together. After clearing the undead lands, Lee Jun-kyung realized his current weapons just couldn't handle his escalating fire powers. It looked like he had another stop to make before the big mobilization. He needed a new weapon. Our hero stepped into a place that looked like it was ripped from a medieval fantasy, a classic smithy. A young blacksmith grunted for him to wait, deep in the zone with his work. Our hero could hardly believe he was seeing this guy in the flesh. This was one of the hunters who awoke as a dwarf, the man who would one day become the legendary wandering blacksmith. A living icon for every hammer-wielding fighter, Park Jae-hyun. A full 4 hours crawled by before Jae-hyun was finally finished. The blacksmith turned and sized up the young man. Who are you? Lee Jun-kyung just smiled. After a 4-hour wait, now he decides to ask. I'm here to commission a weapon, he said, then casually asked if the blacksmith worked alone. Jae-hyun was thrown. This kid seriously came to him, a nobody blacksmith for a weapon. The whole situation was bizarre, and now he was asking if he was the only one working here. Lee Jun-kyung explained his curiosity. Because I noticed a second blacksmith's hammer. The smith admitted the kid had a sharp eye. It was someone else's hammer. But that wasn't important. The young blacksmith leaned in. So why me? I've never actually crafted gear for anyone before. This is all just a hobby. What brings a hunter like you to my doorstep? Lee Jun-kyung's answer was simple. My patron told me to come here. Jae-hyun's eyes narrowed. A patron working directly with this kid. It sounded completely unbelievable. Lee Jun-kyung knew the blacksmith had no reason to believe him, but he also knew the truth. He could feel his patron pulling the strings in his life. Park Jae-hyun was so legendary that his sponsor could literally dictate the destiny of every blacksmith out there. According to the Demon King's own autobiography, Park Jae-hyun was the master craftsman who forged all of the king's epic weapons, but thanks to the meddling of the 12 heroes, that entire arsenal was scattered across the globe. After that, Park Jae-hyun's forge only lit up for the 12 heroes. The Demon King even wrote, "If only Park Jae-hyun had stayed loyal to me, we would have reshaped history itself." Hearing this, Jae-hyun figured that, with patrons being this ridiculously strange, he had no reason to doubt the young man before him. Still, there was a problem. He flat out told the hunter he couldn't forge a single thing for him. Lee Jun-kyung wondered, is this guy just in a bad mood or what? So he asked him what the issue was. The blacksmith confessed that he and Fire were not on good terms. This was the insane reason he hadn't accepted a single custom order until now. Lee Jun-kyung just smirked and held out his hand to the blacksmith. The kid declared that he would whip up the exact flame the blacksmith required, and just like that, a perfect orb of fire ignited in our hero's palm. Lee Jun-kyung asked if the blacksmith had ever seen fire control abilities on this level. Jae-hyun scoffed in disbelief. What's that tiny flicker in your hand supposed to control? But Lee Jun-kyung shot back that he had the power to command fire however he pleased, explaining that it wasn't just some party trick, it was complete and total domination. A week flew by. The weapon was forged, and our protagonist was finally holding it. Jae-hyun then admitted that he couldn't make the shield that the visitor had asked for. As they'd already gone over, pulling that off by himself was basically impossible. This spear, however, was infused with the very essence of fire control. The blacksmith had poured every last drop of his skill into it. He admitted almost apologetically that with his current power, this was the absolute best he could produce. It was a level 1 Muspelheim spear, a uniquely rare weapon that massively boosted one's control over flames. Lee Jun-kyung knew the blacksmith had pushed his limits. To create something even more broken would require the direct intervention of a patron. Still, some weapons can evolve with their wielder, even if the chance is next to zero. Lee Jun-kyung thought that if he could get his hands on a weapon like that, he'd be set for life. The blacksmith then revealed that the weapon wasn't even finished. That specific flame it needed hadn't arrived yet. For now, the weapon was stuck at a low level. Lee Jun-kyung had to leave, but he was warned not to be gone for too long. The blacksmith's gaze then fell upon the bracelet on the visitor's wrist. Jae-hyun asked, "Is that a gift from a patron?" It seemed his sponsor was also some kind of heavy hitter. The blacksmith said he couldn't put his finger on it, but he was getting a seriously bad vibe. He warned him that it probably wasn't worth using. They were talking about the skull bracelet. Lee Jun-kyung had a gut feeling that the old master was right. It was just a guess, but he knew the skull was the keeper of souls. Fulfilling its call was going to be tough while he was caught up in the mobilization of hunters. After testing out the spear, our hero realized it was way more powerful than he ever expected. Lee Jun-kyung figured if he could just convince Jong and Chong to join his side, their chances of victory would shoot through the roof. Everything was getting more intense, but if the future unfolded like it did in the book, he held an undeniable ace up his sleeve. He knew he had to get stronger right now. To hone his skills, our hero went on a relentless grind clearing dungeons and slaughtering monsters non-stop. The kid knew that even if hunting could level him up, 2 weeks was nowhere near enough time. Even sleep felt like a total waste. 2 weeks vanished. The leader of the Northern Army Guild stood before his legion and announced that all preparations were finally complete. The day had arrived for the Northern Army to claw its way out of the shadows. The entire world was about to learn their name. A storm of demonic energy swirled around the guild leader. It was an insane amount of magical power. The leader's lieutenant reported that all the requirements to become a hero had been satisfied. Everything was unfolding exactly as he had foreseen. The guild leader roared that today the world would be rocked by the name of the Northern Army Guild. The hunter thought to himself that he would finally seize the title of king. Kim Soo-yeon drove our hero in a government car heading straight into the danger zone. He begged him, "Are you really planning to go? Because you could die." The Northern Army Guild is far more vicious than they let on. The last guild that tried to raid the Northern Army was utterly annihilated. Lee Jun-kyung already knew all this. Kim Soo-yeon pressed again. "Are you seriously going in there? After everything that's happened, you're a VIP to the association. Nothing bad will happen if you just sit this one out." Lee Jun-kyung reminded his friend that nothing is more valuable than your own life. Our hero added that he knows this all too well. He wasn't walking into this mobilization just hoping for the best. He also said that these scumbags were about to learn that life isn't just some meaningless sound, but something precious. A massive portal tore open over the city's coastline. The public descended into chaos. But the hunters were already assembling, preparing to charge the dungeon as they gathered near the portal. The press was swarming, their cameras flashing as they hunted for soundbites from anyone famous. Lee Jun-kyung recalled hearing that the top league guild had completely bailed on these raids. So what the hell was their guildmaster doing here? Song Gu-yan just smirked. He'd already publicly branded the Northern Army as his enemy, and besides the super rookie, was his boy. Where else would he be? Song Gu-yan then fired a question at Lee Jun-kyung. You'd go in even if I tried to stop you, wouldn't you? Our hero's answer was instant and firm, but stopping him was never the plan. Look, you've probably already figured it out, Song Gu-yan said, but their leader is way stronger than he looks. He's officially listed as a B rank. Lee Jun-kyung cut in. He's already hit A rank, hasn't he? Song Gu-yan's expression confirmed it. My thoughts exactly. He was floored by how much stronger Lee Jun-kyung had become. It was obvious the kid had a rock-solid game plan for whatever fresh hell was waiting inside that dungeon. I'll be waiting for you out here, Song Gu-yan declared. Our hero's eyes narrowed. Why would you do that? Song Gu-yan's reply was cold steel. Because if you don't walk out of that gate, I won't let their guild get away with it. For what happens in there? Lee Jun-kyung was shook. Was this guy seriously prepared to annihilate an entire guild? If he died, just then an announcement boomed through the area. The raid was starting. All final preparations had to be completed, and all personnel were to converge on the assembly point. This was supposed to be Choi Yong-seon's moment of glory. Gunther and the Rhine Gate were destined to slaughter countless people. But this is the exact moment where history shatters. The speakers crackled to life again. Hunters are now entering the Rhine Gate. A grim smile touched the protagonist's lips. This was it. This is where he would seize all the glory that was rightfully his. A massive crowd of hunters surged toward the shimmering portal. Suddenly, the Northern Army's leader bellowed, "It has finally begun." Then a system message flared to life. Under the influence of the gate's unique properties, the ambient magical power has been altered. Utter confusion rippled through the hunters. What the hell did that mean? No one had ever seen a notification like that before. It was impossible. A new message flashed. Gate rank has been upgraded. The gate's special trait has been activated. The exit is now sealed. A massive congregation of awakened, all trapped in one place. And somewhere far above the constellations turned their gaze to this unfolding drama. My whole body feels like it's burning, one of the hunters screamed. The awakened had stumbled into a special gate. The density of magical energy will now increase. Pure panic exploded. People started screaming, demanding a way out of the gate. This wasn't a normal raid anymore, it was an A-rank death trap. And everyone knew A-rank gates were basically impossible without a hero-class hunter. Some hunters just collapsed their faces, masks of pure despair. Jun-kyung watched them, his expression grim. A perfectly logical reaction. This place had just become their tomb. He shot a look at the Northern Army's leadership. They didn't even flinch. It was obvious they knew this was going to happen. This was exactly the scenario they wanted. The guildmaster roared for everyone to get a grip, pretending to understand their shock. He acted just as freaked out as everyone else, saying he also wanted to know what was going on. But hey, gates are still a huge mystery, right? Unexpected things happen all the time. He promised the scientists would look into it. The important thing now, he preached, was not to lose hope. They had to fight to live. Choi Yong-seon, the leader of the Northern Army Guild, swore he would clear this gate alongside his comrades. Lee Jun-kyung saw it for what it was, the power of the ruler of the currents. He was manipulating the emotions of every single hunter. But thanks to the fallen angel's blessing, our hero was immune to coercive command. The guildmaster's second-in-command leaned in close. Should we get started? The leader shook his head. The waves inside this gate will be endless, he muttered. We have to conserve our strength as much as possible. He ordered his men to stick to the plan they'd already made. Choi Yong-seon's real goal was to wipe everyone out. But he needed survivors to spread the legend of his heroism. His guild would hold back and save its strength until the moment to retreat. His deputy was skeptical. Is that even going to work? These hunters aren't idiots. They'll follow your command. But the second they realize the Northern Army isn't actually fighting, they'll know something's wrong. As much as we can, the leader repeated. We'll throw some cannon fodder and a few of our own members in to help them, just enough to keep them from getting suspicious. The deputy went pale. His boss was actually willing to sacrifice their own guildmates for this twisted plan. Choi Yong-seon's gaze drifted to our hero. That kid worries me, he said quietly. It's like his eyes can see right through everything I've planned. It would be best to get rid of him, and soon. He then looked at Jong Chang, his ever-loyal attack dog. He'd been forced to reveal part of the strategy because of the man's soft-hearted nature, but he never for a second doubted his skill or his absolute loyalty. The guildmaster ordered the knight, keep your eyes on that kid, and when you see an opening, eliminate him. Choi Yong-seon added, it will be better for me and for the entire Northern Army. The first wave was upon them. The hunter saw the monsters surging forward. One of the men screamed, they're mermen. On their own, their ranks were nothing special, but bunched up together, they were a serious problem. They had to make a move, and fast. Lee Jun-kyung clocked that the monsters were just charging in with zero formation. Even these low-tier mobs were acting completely reckless. He realized placement was everything, especially since the monsters were weaponizing the water itself. Lee Jun-kyung roared for the wounded to get to the rear, and for the rest to lock into a defensive formation. But our guy decided it was too soon for him to jump in. First, he had to read the room and get a proper lay of the land. The leader of the Northern Army Guild screamed at his men to wipe out the enemy. The hunters, following their commander's orders, immediately barreled toward the monsters. Lee Jun-kyung couldn't believe it. Had Choi Yong-seon really deployed his guild members this early, the hunters crashed against a wave of low-level monsters. Anyone who got hit was immediately swarmed by healers, and then it all clicked for Lee Jun-kyung. The ones being sent to fight the mermen were the absolute bottom feeders of the Northern Army. The leadership was shamelessly using its own people as cannon fodder to fire up the other hunters. The guild master was more than willing to sacrifice his rookies just to protect his own reputation. Lee Jun-kyung's weapon flared to life. He realized the situation was way simpler than he'd thought. Our hero exploded into action, moving to engage the horde head-on. All the while, the knight from the Northern Army kept his eyes glued on him. Lee Jun-kyung declared it again for everyone to hear: the Northern Army Guild was rotten from the inside out. The guildmaster and his second-in-command had been twisted. It all went sideways the moment they met that person. Everything changed after that. The knight had to admit the kid was spitting facts. The Northern Army was corrupt. If things kept going this way, countless hunters and guild members were going to end up in body bags. Choi Yong-seon tried to pull the loyalty card on the knight, telling him he believed in his righteousness. But the knight knew that this cornered guild had a darker agenda. Just then, Lee Jun-kyung finally dove into the battle, and instantly every eye was on him. The young man soaked up the brunt of the assault, then unleashed a hellfire that vaporized a massive swarm of monsters. The other hunters were stunned. A guy this powerful was really in this gate raid. In that moment, their fear evaporated. The knight was absolutely floored. Had Lee Jun-kyung seriously leveled up this much? Just 10 days ago, they were on the same playing field. Now he was on a completely different planet. The wave was annihilated. They caught a short breather. Some of the watching patrons even dropped a few pity rewards on the awakened. The fallen angel was clearly enjoying the young man's performance. The guardian of the long spear was suddenly very interested in Lee Jun-kyung. The spherical representative also started paying attention. The Lord of all things wet had taken notice of him. Lee Jun-kyung could feel the weight of all those sponsors watching him. Could he actually pull off what only the god-tier heroes could do, and juggle multiple patrons? During the break, the other hunters rushed over to Lee Jun-kyung, flooding him with their thanks. They were desperate to know his name and what guild he belonged to. But Lee Jun-kyung just said, "This isn't over. There are way more waves coming. Everyone better get ready now. This gate has to be A rank at minimum." The hunters nodded in understanding and immediately started prepping. Our hero shot a look at the Northern Army's guild leader. The young man knew that Snake's plan was to swoop in at the last second to save these hunters and force them into his debt. However, our boy just completely wrecked that entire scheme. After this, these hunters would be on his side, no question. The protagonist decided to pull up his status and check the numbers. He was already level 24. Lee Jun-kyung knew these gates were going to be the foundation for his massive power-up. He had to hit level 30 in here. The next wave began. The mermen charged the hunters again, blasting them with water cannons. Lee Jun-kyung just kept racking up wins. The fourth wave was cleared, but this time, people got hurt. A hunter yelled that 4 of them were down. Were they going to make it? Lee Jun-kyung thought it was impossible. He was determined to clear this gate with 0 casualties. Our hero was baffled. Why was the Northern Army still barely participating in the fight? Lee Jun-kyung finally snapped, shouting, "I know what you're planning." The guild leadership was trying to preserve their army's strength by refusing to fully engage. Another hunter backed Lee Jun-kyung up. "Now that you mention it, he's right. Not a single member of the Northern Army has died. They don't even have a scratch." Lee Jun-kyung said they needed to at least pretend to fight properly. Or were they just going to chill in the back and watch? While the other hunters threw their lives away, the deputy turned to his brother asking, "Is this for real? How are we just letting this happen?" Choi Yong-seon could feel his whole plan shattering. The idea was to use the disposable guild members and hunters to clear the waves, and then he planned to turn on them. But that was a pipe dream now. They all knew they were being set up to be sacrificed. And just like that, panic began to ripple through the low-level guild members. The guild leader seethed. His perfectly laid trap was somehow playing right into this kid's hands. Choi Yong-seon barked an order to hold their positions. They needed to watch this play out just a little longer. In his mind, Lee Jun-kyung had to be running on fumes by now, making the power gap between them colossal. Finishing him off should be a walk in the park. On top of that, the guy was still fighting on the front lines, torching what was left of his stamina. The stage was set to deliver his final curtain call. The fifth wave of monsters finally crumbled, but before anyone could catch their breath, a semi-boss erupted into view, a water creature of unbelievable scale. "It's a water golem," a hunter screamed foolishly, charging in to attack. This thing, however, was packing some serious destructive force, and it was basically invulnerable. The golem's strikes hit with the force of a high-pressure fire cannon. There was no way to block them. How could they possibly win? As always, just when hope seemed lost, our protagonist made his move. Wielding a spear and shield, Lee Jun-kyung blazed forward, his fire magic erupting. It was a classic showdown, fire versus water. Who was going to come out on top in this elemental clash? With a single crushing blow, the water golem was grievously wounded. Lee Jun-kyung had just scored a huge victory. He then dropped some knowledge on the others. "These gates are absolutely saturated with magical energy. You can't just rely on brute strength," he explained. "You have to use your head, tap into the gate's own power. Imbue your weapons, fill them to the very top with mana." The archer was stunned. Wait, isn't that something only high rankers can do? But they had to trust him. The assault on the next water golem kicked off again, but this time with a whole new level of intensity. The hunters could feel it working. A jolt of hope shot through them. For the first time, they felt like they could actually win. "We're hitting it harder," Lee Jun-kyung announced, "but this level of damage won't be enough to take it down for good." He knew the real secret to killing this semi-boss. You had to destroy the core that housed all of its magical energy. But it wasn't time yet. He had to wait for the perfect opening. The other hunters watched in terror as the water golem began gathering its power again. It was gearing up for that same apocalyptic attack. They were going to have to scatter again. Lee Jun-kyung knew this was it. He was only going to get one shot to end this thing. The core was wide open. It was now or never. He blasted forward, spear first, rocketing toward the monster. With zero hesitation, his attack was a blur of motion so blindingly fast, the semi-boss had no time to even register the threat. His spear pierced straight through its watery form. The boss was obliterated. High above, the patrons snapped their attention to Lee Jun-kyung. The young man simply held out his hand, and the spear shot back into his grip. That return ability he'd leveled up was proving to be insanely useful. One of the other hunters froze. "Wait a minute," he stammered. "I've heard the stories about a mysterious hunter with a long spear and shield. It was the super rookie." The hunters were absolutely buzzing, realizing they'd just met a true hero. Now, they were definitely going to survive. All they had to do was trust the super rookie. Lee Jun-kyung felt a surge of triumph. He'd finally snagged the support of several patrons at once, but his victory lap was cut short. The fallen angel broadcasted its extreme disapproval, and just like that, the other patrons ghosted him, leaving Lee Jun-kyung crushed. He couldn't help but think the player's skill was still on point. He figured that even the legendary Demon King couldn't have handled multiple patrons at the same time. The guy was a legend. He wasn't backed by an army of patrons, but he still clawed his way to the top. Meanwhile, the leader of the Northern Army Guild was fuming again. How did this nobody get so powerful in such a ridiculously short amount of time? From what Choi Yong-seon was seeing, this hunter was already on the verge of A rank. He couldn't afford to underestimate this kid. His knight stepped forward and said, "Sir, it's time for us to make our move." Could everything that just went down have been part of the rookie's master plan? They couldn't just stand by and let him dictate the battle. The knight continued, "If your original plan has been completely wrecked, then we need to pivot to a new course of action and get moving." The guild leader erupted in fury. "Are you telling me to stop trying to kill Lee Jun-kyung? Do you actually think we've lost?" he roared. "I'm the one who built the Northern Army and raised it to these heights." He was not the type of hunter to ever back down. Choi Yong-seon addressed his hunters, his voice booming. "From this moment on, we are taking an active role in clearing this gate." The leader proclaimed, "A king will never allow his pride to be trampled." At his words, the knight removed his helmet, bowing before him. "I'm promoting you," Choi Yong-seon announced to deputy guild leader. Although he added with a smirk, "With that timid look on your face, you'll have a hard time keeping the other members in line." Choi Yong-seon scanned the chaotic battlefield and declared, "That opponent is practically begging to be put down." The Northern Army hunters charged at the monsters, fired up and ready to show everyone what their guild was really made of. But the super rookie wasn't just chilling on the sidelines. He was still a one-man wrecking crew, clearing wave after wave without breaking a sweat. Our MC was just doing his usual grind, and to anyone watching, it looked like he was just gassing himself out. But with every level up, he was actually regenerating his stamina bit by bit. Locked in, Lee Jun-kyung was totally oblivious to the colossal, glowing-eyed monster creeping up on him. Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice screams a warning. Lee Jun-kyung snaps to attention just in time, blasting a wave of fire magic to deflect the monster's savage attack. He whips his head around and spots a girl standing nearby. She hits him with a, "Guess you don't have eyes in the back of your head, huh?" And that's when it hits him he's face to face with Jong-in Chong. Our boy just brushes her off, saying he doesn't need the help. Her face just falls. You can see she thinks he's completely disappointed in her, but she's not about to back down over something so small. Zhang In-chong steals her resolve, preparing to go all out and shatter her own limits. This girl was determined to show Hunter Lee Jun-kyung exactly what she was made of. She literally turns her back on her own squad, the Northern Army, and launches a solo assault on the ravenous beast. Zhang In-chong is convinced that her own brand of absolute justice will shield everyone. Meanwhile, the other hunters are panicking over their injured comrades. They're desperately searching for healing potions, screaming for the healer's help. To Lee Jun-kyung, the whole scene is a living hell. They started with 111 people. Now, not even half of them are still standing. Zhang In-chong walks over and asks our guy if he's holding up okay. Lee Jun-kyung just tells her he's fine, then flips the question right back at her. That's when her own guildmates from the Northern Army start tearing her down, throwing insults, and calling her a damn traitor. Lee Jun-kyung is floored, thinking, wait, isn't she their vice captain? How can they just talk to her like that? Sure, the Northern Army had a reputation for crushing anyone in their path, but its members still clung to a fierce, if twisted, sense of justice. So Lee Jun-kyung speaks up, declaring for everyone to hear that Zhang In-chong is the vice captain, a fact they can't just ignore. Then he makes his move, telling her to join him since she's clearly abandoned the very people she'd protected for so long. But Zhang In-chong shoots back. That's precisely why I did it. She clarifies that she's teaming up with him because she cares about these people and wants to truly protect them. Zhang In-chong announces that she's done just standing by, watching them all get dragged down into the abyss. Our protagonist warns her that the Northern Army's leader will push forward with his plan no matter what, even if it's completely beyond his power. Don't worry, Zhang In-chong replies, totally prepared. I'm ready for it. And at that very moment, the final wave begins. Every sign points to one thing, the arrival of the final boss, the monstrous river worm. This is absolute madness, Lee Jun-kyung breathes. But Zhang In-chong speculates that the Northern Army's leader must have an ace up his sleeve to beat this thing. She adds that a special method was given only to the leader. She's 100% certain of it. He had a secret plan for taking down a beast of this magnitude. But before Choi Yong-seon can even start the hunt, there's another problem people dead set on stopping this raid. First things first, they have to be dealt with. So there they stand, Lee, Jun-kyung, and Zhang In-chong, facing down a massive mob of hunters who are completely bewildered by the situation. Zhang In-chong yells out the truth: the Northern Army has betrayed them all. Didn't any of you notice how sketchy everything felt? The leadership's master plan was to eliminate everyone else just to hoard all the rewards. As the vice captain, Zhang In-chong tells them she's spilling the whole truth. Then she drops the final bomb, and now the leadership is planning to attack you. Even Lee Jun-kyung is stunned. The mood shifts in an instant. Nothing makes a hunter stronger than being backed into a corner. Realizing they're dead either way, they decide to go down fighting. The guild leader just scoffs from a distance. What is this pointless resistance? It changes nothing. The Northern Army will proceed with the plan no matter what. With a dramatic swing of his sword, Choi Yong-seon roars, summoning the massive river worm. Lee Jun-kyung can only stare in disbelief. Is that thing inhaling all the water? A moment later, the worm unleashes a cataclysmic torrent of water straight into the sky. The aftermath is practically a biblical flood. It all clicks into place for Lee Jun-kyung, who realizes they're using the river worm to dominate the entire battlefield. If the guildmaster actually clears this gate, he'll be celebrated as the newest hero of the era, a completely corrupt and rotten hero. The god of war Gunther. Lee Jun-kyung reflects on all the non-stop grinding he's done up to this point. But is it going to be enough? Even Choi Yong-seon seems a bit rattled, admitting that the kid's flame is bizarre. How could it possibly keep burning in a torrential downpour like this? With his weapon ablaze and in his hands, Lee Jun-kyung is ready to take on the world. He thinks to himself that at this point, there's only one thing left to do: fight. Choi Yong-seon and Lee Jun-kyung finally collide. This battle was destined to happen. Burning with raw determination, our hero swings his weapon, aiming to shatter the leader of the Northern Army Guild. Choi Yong-seon was absolutely blindsided by the rookie's response. How could a mere boy radiate this much insane pressure? Where in the world did he get this kind of power, especially here, right on the riverbank of all places? The guild leader figured his own abilities should be surging right now, considering he'd already hit A rank. Lee Jun-kyung straight up admitted it, saying when he first stepped through that gate, he was leagues weaker than the guildmaster. But he sure as hell didn't just sit on his hands. A cold dread crept up Choi Yong-seon's spine. Had the kid's patron hooked him up with some game-breaking support while he wasn't looking? The protagonist just smirked, revealing he'd been sandbagging his energy, moving like a newbie, while secretly grinding levels and hunting. Our hero then dropped the bomb that none of that even mattered because that wasn't the point. The heat from his flames just kept cranking up relentlessly. At this point, all the water in the world couldn't snuff out this inferno. The guild leader knew he couldn't win a direct power clash. He had to get tactical. Choi Yong-seon bellowed, summoning the massive river worm to rise up and shield him. The villain scoffed, declaring that the kid only got this bold because he was gifted a tiny bit of support. But the power he'd been granted, oh, that was on a completely different dimension from whatever scraps this boy had received. He was about to hammer the reality of his true power into the kid's head. But Lee Jun-kyung anticipated it. The river worm's protective instincts were kicking in. It was coiled around him, guarding him like he was its own child. With the colossal monster looming at his back, Choi Young-seon felt invincible, an incredible surge of power coursing through him. It's now or never, Lee Jun-kyung thought, and without a shred of fear he blitzed straight towards the guild leader. Of course, Choi Young-seon never imagined the kid would have the guts to pull a move like that. Our hero unleashed a devastating strike, but a shimmering barrier from the monster flared to life, deflecting the entire attack. High on the monster's power, Choi Young-seon decided to launch his own counter, swinging his sword with absolute confidence. The guild leader sneered that if his opponent dropped to his knees and begged for his life, he might be shown some mercy. The Northern Army would be the sole victor here. But that's when Jong and Chung crashed the party. The girl's voice cut through the tension. What about your oath? The one about protecting humanity? What happened to all your grand ideals? The head of the Northern Army and Lee Jun-kyung, locked in a tense standoff, just kept firing verbal shots at each other. You're insane. How could you just dive into the worm's mouth? Choi Young-seon yelled, but Lee Jun-kyung just grinned. You've got it all wrong. I was just waiting for it to swallow you. When they guard their young, they can gulp them down and keep them safe inside their bodies. And no matter what kind of worm it is, it's always bone dry in there, the kid added, revealing his master plan. Inside that parched stomach, the power of the patron lord of the rivers would be totally nerfed, while his own fire abilities would get a massive power-up. Choi Young-seon stammered that it was impossible. He was the king. He was chosen to be the king. The guild leader stalked toward our hero, demanding, "Who are you?" In response, Lee Jun-kyung summoned his flames. He was about to show him exactly who he was, launching a ferocious attack. In that exact moment, the skull of the Guardian of Souls activated, absorbing the hero's soul. The kid knew it all along. The skull doesn't feast on monster souls. It craves powerful human souls, especially from those who have trained for ages, people who became heroes. And then the ultimate plot twist. The fallen angel descended and struck down the Lord of Rivers. All support flowing from the Lord of Rivers was instantly cut off. Lee Jun-kyung's mind raced. Wait, did my patron just die? Killed by the fallen angel, but that couldn't be right. The Book of the Demon King clearly states that patrons are immortal. Just then, a swirl of dark energy materialized, and from it emerged a single black raven. The raven spoke, its voice ancient. You still haven't answered. What is your response to my question? A flashback hits Lee Jun-kyung. He declares that he didn't slay a monster. He destroyed a hunter. He's walking the path of a tyrant, not a peacemaker, maybe even the path of the Demon King. But that alone isn't going to be enough to change this world. He'll bear any shame, any sin. He'll become something that surpasses even the Demon King. The Black Raven seemed pleased. An interesting answer, it rasped. We will meet again soon. The protagonist watched the mysterious bird dissolve back into dark energy that vanished into thin air. Lee Jun-kyung whispered a farewell to the raven, telling it to report every last detail it had witnessed to its master. With that, the Rhine River gate boss, the river worm, was finally dead. It was completely consumed by the raging inferno, with zero chance of survival. The system announced he'd made the greatest contribution, rewarding him with the essence of water and a major level up. The other hunters could only stare in awe at the young man, the kid who had single-handedly annihilated the river worm. The hunters erupted in cheers, shouting that the super rookie actually did it. Zhang and Chang screamed his name. The protagonist finally turned to look back at them, and locked eyes with his opponent lunging straight for him. With reflexes like a cat, our hero threw his shield up, blocking the assault just in the nick of time. The deputy head absolutely exploded, demanding to know what this guy did to his brother. Why did he have to ruin everything? But Lee Jun-kyung just kept deflecting the guild leader's brother's wild attacks, not even bothering to throw a single punch back. He waited until his opponent had completely burned himself out, before coolly pressing the tip of his spear against the guy's chest. Lee Jun-kyung then dropped some serious truth, saying the whole reason they got these insane powers as hunters was to shield humanity from disaster. With great power comes great responsibility, fam. Anyone who uses their strength to prey on the weak has zero right to call themselves a hunter. Lee Jun-kyung declared he'd seen more than enough pointless bloodshed for one day turning his back on the guild leader's little bro. He told him to reflect on his actions, and if he did, maybe, just maybe, he'd get to keep on living. But nope, the deputy guild leader pulled a blade from a hidden sheath, lunging at our hero and screaming that he was going to destroy him. In a flash, Jung In-chong leaped between them, parrying the attack from her former ally. The deputy guild leader was completely stunned. How could she betray him like that? As the drama unfolded, the Soul Keeper's skull quietly absorbed another one of our hero's souls. You okay, Lee Jun-kyung asked the girl. Jung In-chong just shook her head, whispering that she should have stopped them way earlier. If she'd just stepped in, none of this tragedy would have ever happened. But our hero told her not to blame herself because she was nothing like them. The girl, however, was broken, saying this was the end of the road for her. She declared she no longer had the right to wield a sword and would live only to atone for the Northern Army's crimes. A thought flashed through Lee Junkyung's mind. Wait, has Jung In-chong actually given up for good? No way. She's destined to become a legendary hero. He decided then and there he wouldn't let her waste her life like this. She deserved a much better fate. For now, all he could do was watch over her. The second they stepped out of the gate, they were absolutely mobbed by journalists and crowds of people. A rep from the Hunters Association stepped forward, telling the press to back off and give the hunters some space. The reporters were buzzing, demanding to know where the guildmaster Choi Yong-sun had disappeared to. And now that they mentioned it, Choi Yong-soo was also totally MIA. What in the world actually happened inside that dungeon, and where did most of the Northern Army even go? Could the hunter standing dead center be the one who led the whole raid? The theories were flying, and everyone was dying to know what went down. The head of the High League Guild stepped up, confirming the biggest rumor. That's him, the newly awakened S-rank super rookie. He quickly added that these hunters had just survived a brutal gate clear and seriously needed time to rest and recover. Sun Guoyan insisted that the survivors be given a well-deserved break. The gate that 110 people had entered was now infamous. Only 39 people made it back from its depths. Word on the street was without the super rookie, that number would have been way smaller. Cut to a dark room where a black raven swoops through an open window, landing on a table next to a dude with an eye patch. The man noted that Hugin was late, musing that this new hunter probably knows about their little trick for controlling the river worm. He also knows the secret to becoming a hero, the man smirked. How fascinating. The raven let out a series of caws, a language only they understood. The man with the eye patch listened, a slow smile spreading across his face. So he gets stronger by hunting monsters. This new info meant they absolutely had to meet the survivors from the Rhine River Gate incident. Prepare everything, he ordered. We no longer have any use for the Northern Army. The person on the other end of the line simply said he understood and would get everything ready for the press. Just then, the door opened, and Jung In-chong walked in. Standing at a podium before the remains of the Northern Army Guild, the girl announced she was tired of the hunter life. She'd thought long and hard about it, but the other members were devastated. They couldn't just let their deputy leader walk away. They had grown way too close. Jung In-chang glanced back and saw every single hunter standing right behind her in solidarity. You did nothing wrong, one of them yelled out. This was all the master's brother's fault. Then, as one, they all fell to their knees. They pleaded with her not to let them go. One hunter spoke up, his voice cracking. I just want to live an honorable life, so I can face my son without any shame. From here on out, we'll carry the army's sins on our own shoulders. Your journey can't end like this, they cried. But Jung In-chong simply replied that it was her duty as the last captain left on this sinking ship. This burden was hers alone to carry, not theirs. But a hunter shot back. There's something you don't get, ma'am. Our hands are already soaked in blood. We're in this with you all the way. Elsewhere, Sung Hyun started to wonder if his big speech to the reporters hyping up the new rookie was a bad move. But Lee Jun-kyung just smirked, telling him he should be thanking the top league guildmaster. Because after that man's press appearance, Lee Jun-kyung's fame didn't just grow, it exploded. He had become an overnight superstar, skyrocketing to A rank in the time it takes to clear a single gate. Honestly, no one was even surprised anymore. The protagonist vaulted from C rank to A rank with what looked like a snap of his fingers, and the press absolutely devours stories like this. He was the ultimate underdog, a hero who conquered every single obstacle. What kind of dark horse was this, shattering all expectations to clear these insane gates? But Song Guyan pointed out a harsh truth. The term dark horse is only ever used for people who are expected to be weak. That label just doesn't fit a super rookie of his caliber. Lee Jun-kyung shot back that without any real background, you couldn't say the nickname was totally off the mark either. Song Guyan was low-key terrified that Lee Jun-kyung would see this as him meddling in his personal business. Luckily, that wasn't how it went down. Our hero just suggested that he should loop in the head of the top league guild on his next move. Lee Jun-kyung's eyes narrowed. How did you know I was weaponizing the concept of hero creation? The whole idea of manufacturing heroes was something nobody even talked about in this day and age. Song Guyan's voice was laced with disbelief. Are you telling me you can actually create a hero? Lee Jun-kyung just smirked, stating that the guild leader already knew everything because he too was a member of Asgard. The moment he spoke those words, a torrent of raw power surged through Song Guyan. His body temperature spiked, and his eyes began to burn with an intense light. Just then, an assistant approached the head of the association asking, "Is everything all right, sir?" The association head just smiled. "I think something interesting just kicked off." Lee Jun-kyung stared down Song Guyan, realizing, so this is your true power. The bald man was stunned. How in the world did you figure that out? Lee Jun-kyung's mind raced back to their first meeting. Heimdall had been part of Asgard from the very beginning. The young man demanded to know why Song Guyan would do all this. The answer was simple. His actions were driven by the fact that he knew the entire game plan. Song Guyan admitted that Lee Junkyung had simply beaten him to the punch, making his move first. He confessed he'd had his own suspicions about Junkyung. That insane growth rate practically screamed that he was hiding something major. Lee Junkyung sighed, realizing that's probably why Song Guyan laid the trap in the first place, and he, like an idiot fish, swam right into it. Our hero figured it wasn't malicious. He pressed him, asking why he felt it was necessary, but was met with dead silence. So Lee Junkyung dropped the bomb he planned to join Asgard, a clandestine society of unbelievably powerful hunters. The real war was about to ignite. Later, Jung In-chang confronted him, demanding to know why he wanted to see her. Lee Junkyung didn't waste any time. "I'll cut to the chase. I need you to join me again." In-chang shook her head. "I think my usefulness ran out back at the Rhine River gates. I have zero pull in the Northern Army anymore." "I'm completely useless," she stated flatly, adding, "I'm not the kind of person who can do anything worthwhile." The protagonist immediately shut that down, insisting she was an incredibly valuable asset. She looked at him completely outraged. Lee Junkyung spoke as if he could see right through her. She finally broke, admitting the Northern Army was a dumpster fire, and she was complicit in all of it. He looked at her with genuine concern and asked what happened. Her voice trembled with regret. "I was completely blind to it." She had no idea about the countless atrocities happening right under her nose. So many hunters just following the guild leader's orders, committing unspeakable crimes. A chill ran down Lee Junkyung's spine as he remembered what they tried to pull on him. In the shadows, they eliminated anyone who got in their way. To Choi Yong-sun, the Northern Army's guildmaster, normal people were no better than insects. Lee Junkyung knew this was bad. For someone with her moral compass, this kind of guilt was a crushing weight. If he did nothing, she would completely shatter, and he absolutely could not afford to lose the Dragon Slayer like this. Lee Junkyung leaned in, his voice intense. "If things keep going this way, what's your move, In-chang? The gates aren't stopping, and hunters keep awakening new terrifying powers. Regular people don't stand a chance against that kind of unimaginable force." He reasoned that if this level of corruption was festering in a small guild like the Northern Army, you could only imagine the horrors happening everywhere else. "Are you really going to turn your back on everyone who needs help?" he challenged her. "I plan to rip this problem out by the roots, to purge all the evil that's spreading around us. It's time to decide. In-chang, whose side are you on?" Lee Junkyung doubled down, stating he wanted to completely obliterate the corruption she had witnessed. The girl stared at him incredulous. "Do you honestly think you can stop all of this? I know you're strong, but do you have any idea of the kind of power they wield?" I'm too weak to fight them." "Even if you had a plan to change the world, what happens when enemies like that stand in your way?" The young man took a deep breath and finally revealed his trump card. "I came from the future." He continued, his voice grim. "Something unimaginable is coming. The death toll will be staggering, the destruction, off the charts. When that day arrives, I'm going to need the power of Jung In-chang." Lee Junkyung then asked, "You're aware that the association is about to summon us, right?" Fine. He'd see him there. The offer was still good. The news was blowing up with reports on the Northern Army Guild. All the monstrous things they'd been doing were finally coming into the light, including the slaughter of innocent people. Lee Junkyung realized this conspiracy ran way deeper than he'd ever suspected. Was this entire thing a setup from the start? Now that they'd served their purpose, they were just being thrown away like trash. This had one person's fingerprints all over it. Just then, the skull on his bracelet flared to life, pulsing with untamed energy. The Soul Keeper's skull had awakened. It was about to be reborn as his one true familiar. Lee Junkyung knew in that moment that the skull was finally complete. It had feasted on the souls of the guild leader and his brother, gorging itself on the waterworm's essence and the water golem's gemstone. A notification popped up. The familiar's name is Hunmu. To summon it, you must speak its name. Our hero couldn't help but wonder just how powerful this thing was. A massive skull materialized before him, its voice booming. "Did you call for me, master?" Lee Junkyung didn't even flinch. A talking bone dragon. At this point, why not? Magic was like the air itself. It was absolutely everywhere. Dropping into a lotus position, Lee Junkyung plunged into a deep meditation, his focus so absolute that his entire body was engulfed in flames. Were they not even scratching the surface of magic's real power? There had to be a way to squeeze more out of it. It was all about the mana flow. Lee Junkyung recalled that the Demon King's guide to unlocking magic's true potential was frustratingly vague, which made putting it into practice a total nightmare. The kid could feel it in his gut. He was fast approaching the point of no return. The moment of truth was closing in. When the clock ran out, all the current A-rank guards would get nerfed down to C-rank hunters. He had to power up before then, but that was a whole lot easier said than done. A message pinged on his phone. It instructed him to head to a specific roadside, where an escort to the association was waiting. He knew this was it. The meeting was finally happening. The association rep escorting him remarked, "First time I've ever seen a rookie this excited." Kim Soo-young pointed out that even when facing the dungeon or the infamous Rhine River gates, the hunter never broke a sweat. It seemed the only thing that could actually rattle him was a meeting with the association's president. To be fair, the president wasn't exactly the kind of person you could just casually chat with. Kim Soo-young added that there was really no reason to be so on edge though. The super rookie wasn't being called in because he'd messed up. This was about rewarding his accomplishments and having a little chat. Lee Jun-kyung shot back that more than 50 hunters had been wiped out in those gates. That body count included the top dogs of the Northern Army. He seriously doubted he was summoned just for a pat on the back and to be asked how he was holding up. This was 100% going to be an interrogation. Sung Hyun then changed the subject, asking if Lee Jun-kyung was dead serious about joining Asgard. Mentioning that was something he could arrange. Our hero already knew Heimdall and Asgard were not on good terms. Their original mission was supposed to be for humanity's sake, but now things had taken a seriously dark turn. When Sung Hyun first met the Demon King, he was already having major doubts about Asgard, but there wasn't a good enough reason to bail. He had only been briefly tied to the Demon King back in Asgard before they went their separate ways. Lee Jun-kyung's plan was to get into Asgard faster than the Demon King ever could, and then leech all the resources he needed to power level himself, squeezing Asgard dry for everything it was worth. Our protagonist stepped into the office to find the association president calmly picking a book off a towering shelf. The president glanced back, claiming he'd completely spaced on their meeting. He said he'd been swamped all day but was glad the kid showed up. But let's be real, this was the man in charge of the entire nation's hunter association. The president's name was John Hyojin. Lee Jun-kyung remembered this guy was a huge fan of the Northern Army, and was even name-dropped in the Demon King's own biography. He was a major power player you simply couldn't afford to underestimate. John Hyojin suggested they cut the crap and get straight to it. The president leveled his gaze at our hero and asked, "Who are you?" He added that they both knew enough about each other already, so there was no point in playing stupid games. Lee Jun-kyung was already sitting on intel, confirming the president had backed the Northern Army. The book was clear you couldn't trust a single word that came out of Odin's mouth. Every last word was a lie. John Hyojin let out a sigh, saying he was bored, and now he was certain they were cut from completely different cloths. The association president admitted the kid was incredibly intriguing. Since awakening, he'd been tearing through monsters inside the gates, and even managed to take down the goblin leader. After a stunt like that, all the top-tier guilds were trying to recruit him. And get this, he also bodied the A-rank river worm solo. Jang Hyojin was shook. The kid's leveling speed was straight up insane. But not everyone was impressed. The association president steps up, demanding to know why our guy torched the hunter he'd personally mentored Choi Young-sun. Lee Jun-kyung just fires back that the president saw the whole thing go down with his own eyes thanks to that little spy crow of his. He laid it out plain and simple. They tried to end me, so I ended them. It's not complicated. The president seethed, claiming the young man had demolished a piece of his own legacy. Lee Jun-kyung shot back. He was just a pawn on your board, so why don't we cut the crap and get to the real issue? Then our hero drops another bombshell announcing he wants to join Asgard. Jang Hyojin just stared, thinking this kid had a serious talent for leaving people speechless. Did he even have a clue what Asgard was? Lee Jun-kyung didn't miss a beat, replying that it's the squad of first-generation hunters formed to save humanity. The kid then added with ice in his veins that he knew he was standing in front of Odin, the king of Asgard himself. Lee Jun-kyung doubled down, stating one more time that he wanted in. The book had spilled all the tea. Odin was never a good guy. That whole kind-hearted act was just a front. He'd always been a ruthless operator, but even a king has his weaknesses. The association president was completely floored. How in the world could this kid know all that Lee Jun-kyung was betting his life on the intel he'd dug up from that book? And the gamble paid off. Jang Hyojin was too intrigued to turn him away now. His own curiosity had him trapped. The president admitted that his all-seeing eye had zero effect on the kid, then asked, "You know about my eye, don't you?" Our protagonist smirked. "You mean the one that's supposed to pierce through any lie?" Turns out the fallen angel had thrown up a firewall blocking any kind of mental attack from this patron. Jang Hyojin's lips curled into a grin as he conceded, "All right, kid, I'll let you into Asgard." But he warned you've got to pass a few tests first. Based on how you do, we can think about an official application. The president then laid down the law, imposing a mental ban on everyone in the room from ever speaking about what just happened. Lee Jun-kyung silently noted that his patron hadn't just blocked the truth-seeing gaze, but it had completely deflected the gag order too. It was a good thing Odin was totally oblivious. Lee Jun-kyung's mind raced. If his patron could bounce back a mental command like that, then the fallen angel could probably negate any mental attack thrown at him. If that was true, wasn't that ability just way too OP? After the intense showdown with the president, our hero found In Chang. He walked up to her asking what she was still doing there. In Chang looked devastated, admitting she never even got the chance to ask him why he'd done everything he did. Li Junkyung figured the association president just wanted to cut her loose now that she was a liability who knew all his dirty secrets. He then asked her, "So why did he just leave you be? Was it because you're innocent or something?" The girl replied that the president literally invents new sins to pin on innocent people, so trying to do anything was pointless. The young man told her the truth was much simpler and much colder. The only reason you're alive is because you mean absolutely nothing to him. The president figured that whether she lived or died, it wouldn't change a single thing in his grand plan. As long as the Northern Army existed, he could just wipe it off the map as a warning shot to another, more useful guild. "And that's exactly why I'm reaching out to you," Li Junkyung declared, "because I'm going to turn this world on its head. You can call me arrogant or whatever he said, but you've got nothing left to lose. It can't get any worse for you." Naturally, a secret meeting like this could only go down in one place, a grimy, abandoned factory in some industrial wasteland, far from any potential witnesses. In Chang finally looked at him and asked, "So what are you going to do now?" The young man changed the subject, suggesting she'd found herself a patron back inside the Rhine River Gate. "So, which patron has their eye on you?" he asked. In response, the girl revealed a glowing red stone. She admitted she wasn't sure how to use it, but that her patron, Prince Charming, had gifted her the Dragon's Bloodstone. According to the Demon King's autobiography, a stone like this had only surfaced 3 times in all of history. The Dragon's Bloodstone is the one thing you need to gain Siegfried's eternal life. And then, In Chang said, she was ready to give the stone to Mr. Li Junkyung. Our hero was stunned. "Do you even realize how priceless this thing is?" The girl offered a faint smile. "Judging by your reaction, you know its value way better than I do." Our hero, of course, was dying to get his hands on that stone, but was she really just going to hand it over? Li Junkyung questioned if it was really okay for her to just give away a gift she received from her own patron. The girl explained that it was a gift meant for the one person who recognized her worth and actually believed in her. "I'm looking forward to the moment we start working together," she said. And with that, Li Junkyung replied that he understood completely. He was bracing himself for a hell of a grind to get his hands on the Dragon's Bloodstone, but plot twist, it turned out to be ridiculously easy. Staring at the girl, a thought crossed his mind. Is she for real this naive? Do people like that even exist anymore? Just then, Li Junkyung reappeared at the blacksmith's forge, asking how he'd been holding up after all this time. The blacksmith was totally caught off guard. What in the world was Li Junkyung doing here? Our guy's eyes scanned the blacksmith's latest creations. And damn, the rack was loaded with some seriously impressive weaponry. "This is insane," the protagonist breathed. But the blacksmith warned they were still a work in progress. Thanks to his help, the forge's fire was burning perfectly, and the blacksmith was beyond grateful. But their stockpile of raw materials was looking pretty pathetic. Li Junkyung knew that even with the blacksmith's god-tier skills, you can't forge masterpieces out of garbage. This whole thing was moving way too fast. Prime materials don't just magically appear overnight, in this time frame anyway. That's when our hero unveils the Dragon's Bloodstone. The dwarf's eyes went wide. He'd never laid eyes on a mineral like this. "Don't get it twisted, this isn't a gift," Li Junkyung stated flatly. The blacksmith just nodded, knowing full well that no sane person would just accept an artifact this legendary and priceless for free. Without another word, Li Junkyung snagged a heavy hammer from the wall, muttering that he was just borrowing it. The blacksmith stared, completely baffled by what he was about to do. Our boy slammed the Dragon's Bloodstone onto the anvil and raised the hammer high. "Watch close," he commanded, right before bringing it down with full force. "Wait, stop," the dwarf bellowed in a panic. But our hero didn't flinch until the stone cracked clean in 2. The blacksmith snatched up the 2 halves, only to watch them instantly morph into 2 whole identical stones. He was absolutely floored. "So that's how you were supposed to use it." The ancient text mentioned that if a dragon stone was saturated with enough blood, it had insane regenerative powers. In other words, you could literally duplicate it. Li Junkyung immediately fused 1/2 of the Dragonstone into the Muspelheim spear. But he knew this was no time to get reckless and experiment. Li Junkyung then revealed he had big plans for the second half too. His gaze then fell upon a specific gladius, a blade that was a dead ringer for Siegfried's legendary gladius from the old stories. Our hero declared that the other piece of the stone belonged right there. After that blacksmith visit, our hero's combat game leveled up hard. The Dragonstone eagerly drank the blood of every orc they slayed. In Chang and Li Junkyung absolutely steamrolled the rest of the dungeon. Afterwards, the girl admitted that the one-handed sword he gave her was completely insane. She'd never wielded a weapon that felt so perfect. It was like the blade had become a part of her. Li Junkyung smirked to himself. Classic Ap Jae-hun. The man's a legend when it comes to smithing. He turned to his companion, asking for a status report on the Dragonstone's power level. She checked the gem. Looks like it's charged up to about 2%. The more monsters they took down, the faster that meter climbed. In Chang was still reeling from the discovery. 1 stone splitting into 2. and 2 becoming 4. A feedback loop of pure power. Giving him that stone was the best call she'd ever made, but their conversation was cut short by the arrival of another beast. It let out a deafening roar, a sonic blast designed to stun them and leave them wide open. But Lee Junkyung was faster, instantly sidestepping the attack and unleashing a torrent of fire magic to counter. He realized the gate's final boss was an ogre warrior, but its strength was off the charts. Wait, where was? In Chang Lee Jun, Kyung whipped his head around, only to see the girl single-handedly blocking the ogre warrior's devastating blow, her sword held firm against the onslaught. That was Siegfried's great sword for you, a weapon forged to withstand the fury of 1,000 dragons. Lee Junkyung could see the pure shock on the monster's face. It couldn't believe a mere human was matching its raw power. Seeing her chance, in Chang went on the offensive and unleashed a devastating arc with Siegfried's blade. The monster didn't stand a chance. I gotta admit, Lee Junkyung said, it's nice knowing you've got my back. He then added, we're heading out in 2 days. In Chang's eyes widened. It was happening, and it was happening soon. Lee Junkyung explained their plan, a 2-day hunting blitz to sharpen their skills and get their teamwork on point. Every little bit would boost their odds of making it out alive. He knew the moment was finally here. The trial Odin had set up just for him. He figured he'd prepped as much as humanly possible in the short time he was given. It would be a huge bonus if In Chang could start building her own rep, but that was a problem for another day. So there was no need to get ahead of themselves. Later, our hero found himself face-to-face with the head of the High League Guild to talk strategy. Song Gu Yuan cut right to the chase, warning Lee Junkyung to back out of tomorrow's mission. If you go, it's a death sentence. This ain't gonna be a walk in the park like the Rhine River Gates Junkyung. This is the real deal. Something about the guild leader's words felt real, so Song Gui Yun cut to the chase, asking him why he was really joining the league and what his true endgame was. Ultimately, the guild leader just declared his absolute trust in Lee Junkyung, saying he wasn't sweating the small stuff anymore. Our boy was completely floored. Where was all this blind faith coming from? The guild leader just admitted he didn't even know himself. He chalked it up to pure intuition, a gut feeling. But then Song Gui Yun got dead serious, warning Lee Junkyung not to show his face tomorrow. Odin, he explained, already had his eyes on the kid. Even if Junkyung ghosted the test, Odin would greenlight his entry into Asgard. The offer was open whenever he wanted. But Song Gui-yun hit him with a reality check. Lee Junkyung still hadn't truly earned his title. If he showed up tomorrow, the only way he'd claim that title was in his obituary. Lee Junkyung just thanked him for the heads up. Then he added that nobody needed to worry. No matter what went down, he was coming back alive. He had way too much left to accomplish. The scene cuts to our hero meeting up with Kim Soo-young, congratulating her on the big promotion. Kim Soo-young lit up with gratitude. She gushed that his progress as a hunter was insane, which in turn was a massive win for her as his curator. But this international expedition, that was next level. The honor of repping your entire nation as a hunter was unbelievable. In Chang chimed in that Kim Soo-yeon seemed like a genuinely good person. Lee Junkyung agreed, noting that the promotion hadn't changed her one bit. After a moment, a shimmering distortion tore through the air, a portal. The special representative stepped forward to make the announcement. The gates to London were officially open. He told them they were cleared to go, adding that they should probably try to come back in one piece. On the other side, a welcoming committee was waiting their leader, announcing what a massive honor it was to finally meet the infamous Dark Horse face to face. They gave our hero a grand welcome to London. The crew played it cool, returning the pleasantries and saying they were just as hyped to be there. They explained they were from their host nation's official association. That's when Lee Junkyung and his partner gave their names. In Chang was seriously impressed, pointing out how clutch it was that Lee Junkyung was fluent in multiple languages. Our protagonist had a dark flashback. He didn't pick up a foreign language for fun. He learned it because back in the hellish Eden era, if you couldn't speak English, you weren't even considered human. The voice of the welcoming party snapped him out of the grim memory. They offered to escort the newcomers to their rooms, mentioning that portal travel can seriously drain your batteries. That evening, a massive party was scheduled to welcome all the hunters who had been summoned for the expedition. In Chang sighed, admitting she was kind of bummed that she couldn't understand English. What are all these people whispering about, she asked. Lee Junkyung didn't sugarcoat it. Some were thrilled to meet her, but others were dropping some seriously racist trash. Suddenly, the entire crowd parted like the Red Sea as a mountain of a man stomped into the hall, completely ignoring the dress code. And he clearly didn't give a damn. The giant strode right up to our crew and sneered, "Who the hell are you supposed to be?" He grumbled that he was expecting to meet 2 idiots from Korea, so what were they doing here? The big guy locked his eyes on our hero. He scoffed. This kid looks like he couldn't even throw a punch. Is the Korean Association only sending out weaklings now? In Chang didn't understand a word, but the pure venom on the guy's face told her everything. The vibe was definitely not good. Quick lore drop: Asgard is a shadow organization that secretly pulls all the strings in Korea, operating from behind the curtain. And they aren't alone. Clandestine groups like them exist all across the globe. controlling the entire hunter world. These factions are locked in a constant power struggle, a cold war for influence and ultimate authority over the gates. This dungeon battle was just another one of their power plays. The original mission, protecting humanity from monsters, had been lost in the sauce a long time ago. They got lost in their own hype, caught up in a toxic pissing contest just to prove who was stronger. Back in the hall, the meathead Gromello taunted that the Korean kid couldn't even answer a direct question. Jun Kyung just thought, this guy is so out of his depth, he just didn't belong. This entire event was originally supposed to be the stage for a different hunter, Choi Young-son. In the original timeline, he was the one who scored a legendary victory at the Rhine River Gates, earning the title and becoming the famous hunter known as Gunther. But our hero meddled. He rewrote history, and because of his intervention, Gunther ended up dead. This completely shattered Odin's master plan, forcing him to send Lee Jun-kyung as a last-minute replacement for the fallen legend. It dawned on Lee Jun-kyung that this bully wasn't even comparing him to Gunther. Was this the consequence of changing the past? Just then, another hunter stepped up, getting right in the giant's face and telling him to leave the Koreans alone.